across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's lots to discuss today because today is the day that the migration deal comes into force. This is the one-in, one-out migration deal. Do you think it makes any difference? Yvette Cooper has declined to say how many people could ultimately be sent back. She's claimed that would provide operational information to smuggling gangs who would work around the numbers. But we think only about 50 people a week are going to be returned. Well, nearly 26,000 have actually come to our shores so far this year. So how is it actually going to work? Is it going to work? We've got Robert Bates from the Centre for Migration Control ready to go. Let's get your thoughts on all of this as well. 0344 499 1000. Loads of migration news today. Rwanda agreeing to take up to 250 migrant deportees from the United States. Immigration piling unsustainable pressure on public services, says the top UK financial watchdog. Finally, they've got the message. The rest of us got it quite a long time ago. We'll also be talking to Mike Neville about the police chief pressured over the statement linking riots to migration, and the prison system coming within days of collapse, and not just once. Also have some shocking footage of a man who brandished a gun in McDonald's before using it to threaten a police officer. We'll speak to a friend of James Whale's. James Whale, of course, died yesterday. We'll reflect further on his legacy and talk about Israel. We'll talk about the football. There's so many things we're going to talk about today. The one that really caught my eye, for obvious reasons, because I'm a massive animal lover, is the zoo in Denmark asking for unwanted pets to feed to lynxes. This is the idea that you'll be give your unwanted pet. First of all, you shouldn't not want a pet. I mean, pets are wonderful things, and if you can keep them, you absolutely should. I love my cat Jack very, very much indeed. And we're in a situation where a zoo in Denmark is asking for unwanted pets to be euthanasised and then fed to lynxes. I think it's absolutely disgusting. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk between now and 7 on Talk Drive. Well, Robert Bates is with me in the studio from the Centre for Migration Control, where he's the research director. Robert, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Peter, thanks for having me.
There's loads going on today. Today's the day that this one-in, one-out deal comes into law. Is it going to be the massive change? Is it going to smash the gangs, stop the boats, make sure everything is all marvellous and tickety-boo when it comes to people crossing the channel and attempting to invade our shores?
So I think there are two ways this could play out. I think the first scenario, which is the far more unlikely scenario, is that it is actually a huge success. But what that actually means is that we then end up with the same number of individuals that are asylum seekers coming to the UK as we are returning to France. And these individuals, having had their asylum application effectively approved by that point, then continue to sort of make those requirements upon the public sector, upon the housing, the state support for those individuals. We know that those that are asylum seekers and refugees have an economic inactivity rate which is far, far higher than the population at large. So that's really, if this is a huge success for the Labour Party, that's what we can look forward to. The far more likely situation is that this will amount to absolutely nothing. The numbers that are being touted of about 50 individuals per week being sent really does amount to about across each year, and it doesn't really start to even dent that backlog. And of course, Yvette Cooper said that it won't exist to those individuals that are already here. It will just start to try and alleviate some of the pressure that those future incoming flows do begin to place on an asylum system that has frankly got out of all control. The amount we spend on the asylum system has increased from under £1 billion in 2019 to over £6 billion last financial year. This is something that I think all parties realise is getting out of control. And the bigger question that we need to be having is whether we can continue to accept 100,000, 108,000 record levels of asylum applications every single year without the pressure just becoming too unbearable.
Let's have a look at the Home Secretary explaining the migrant deal that came into force this morning.
First time, people who arrive on these dangerous and illegal small boats can be returned to France. They will be first detained. They'll be detained immediately on arrival and then detained and held until they are returned to France. And in exchange, we will take people who have applied lawfully, who have been through security checks and a proper legal process. I think that is the right principle. We're not setting out what the numbers will be at this point for two reasons. First of all, because those numbers will vary and will increase, and we haven't fixed an overall number for the scheme. We obviously want it to increase as much as possible. But also, secondly, because we're not going to provide operational information about which numbers, which days that the criminal gangs will then simply use in order to continue to ply their vile trade in human beings.
I mean, I can understand why operational detail is not given, but there's still an awful lot of unanswered questions, even in that short clip from Yvette Cooper there from the BBC this morning.
It is another plan from the Labour Party, which is effectively a wing and a prayer. And how many times have we seen this since they came into office, where they've effectively come up with this grandstanding? We've had Starmer, frankly, on an absolute jolly, a grand tour across the continent, meeting premiers left, right and centre and saying, well, we've secured a breakthrough deal on this, we've secured a breakthrough deal on that, you know, we're going to have closer collaboration. None of that has amounted to anything. We've also then seen in recent days them making a big deal about this new legislation which would criminalise those that are looking to help individuals break into the UK. That is already a criminal offence. It's effectively a gold plating of existing legislation. And now we have this deal as well, which, you know, does give Starmer the chance again to play sort of the consummate diplomat on the international stage, looking to secure this issue. The problem the Labour Party have is they've completely reorientated the small boats crisis away from where the actual problem is. And the problem is the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the world right now who are looking at Britain, can see the soft touch that we have been in recent years and realise that frankly, it is worth the risk to try and break into our country and to pay those people.
Especially if it's 1 in 17. This afternoon, actually, the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch, gave her view on the deal that's come into force. Let's see what Kemi Badenoch thinks about this.
This is not going to make any difference whatsoever. 50, at best, migrants being swapped with France is not going to stop the boats. The thing that would stop the boats was a deterrent. The Rwanda plan, which we had, processing people in a third country, and if they got asylum, keeping them there, is what would have stopped people trying to come to the UK to claim benefits. There are many people who are claiming asylum who are not asylum seekers, and we need to make sure that those who arrive illegally are deported.
Kemi Badenoch there, the Conservative leader. Robert, you mentioned Rwanda there, and we know that the Americans are actually going to send 250 migrant deportees to Rwanda. In fact, some of the same accommodation, I think, is going to be used that we were originally going to use the UK. Tell us about this.
It's painful looking at just how successful the Trump administration has been in actually securing a crackdown on that southern border, and you kind of look at the way he's gone in, and he's been a bit brash, he's been prepared to ruffle a few feathers, and he is actually doing the stuff that the Labour Party were not countenance doing, and that is making a very clear deportation, putting in place a very clear deportation strategy, which not just ensures that those individuals that are in the country illegally are removed, but actually then sends such a clear signal, a bat signal up in the sky effectively to those people looking at Britain and the White Cliffs, and says to them, you will not be able to stay in this country if you do come in here illegally. And Kemi Badenoch was absolutely right that the Rwanda plan is the gist of what we need, and the Conservatives were very right to identify that a third country deportation system is required to put in place a strong deterrent. Fortunately, the Conservatives didn't quite go far enough when it came to, of course, leaving the ECHR and tackling the human rights legislation that was binding their hands really by the end of the government. Hopefully, when we see the review of the ECHR, they realise that actually the position they need to be approaching is that the priority is securing the borders and ending the legal migration crisis, rather than continuing to play hock to an outdated and outmoded human rights framework.
It's interesting what our viewers and listeners are saying, and thank you so much for sending your views in here. Leslie says, I have a good idea. Why don't the French control their borders? Then no migrants will cross the channel, and we won't have to play migrant swapsies. Dawn in Chelmsford says, when will our politicians realise that many people don't really want to keep taking migrants, whether legal or not? We need a zero migrant policy until we can sort out our crowded island. Well, that's an interesting thought from Dawn, actually, and I know there's a number of viewers and listeners who think that. I disagree with that in itself, but nonetheless, we're in a situation where we've got Watchdog, one of the top economic watchdogs, saying that actually we can't just rely on migrant labour and the legal side of migrant labour. We've got to start training people here in the UK. We've got to have a better education system. Unsurprisingly, after the Office of Budget Responsibility has said that, a lot of our viewers and listeners and me are sort of saying, well, thanks for catching up with the rest of us here. You know, we've been saying that for years.
Where have you been for the last 15 years? And of course, it's not just that the OBR were passive passengers whilst this mass migration experiment was being unfurled in the country. They were actively part of the blob, if you like, that was sort of gripping the mentality of ministers and decision makers. This idea that they were sort of the arbiter of economic and fiscal policy was really something that was always on the back of ministers' minds, especially when it came to immigration policy. And we got stuck in this rut of a really superficial idea of, if the population grows, GDP grows, therefore we're doing well. And that was really one of the biggest contributions, if you could call it that, the OBR's actually made to British political discourse, is this infatuation that really emerged with mass migration. They have, thankfully, in the last year or so, had a bit of an epiphany. Of course, they produced modelling last year which showed that actually low-wage migrants coming to the UK on a work visa will be a net cost to the Treasury at every stage of their life, costing us up to £500,000 per person by the time they reach sort of the end of their retirement period. So this is the sort of recognition that even those that have kind of perpetuated the system are starting to have it dawn on them that we can't really continue in a policy where we are allowing in individuals that are taking more from the state than they're actually contributing.
I wonder what you make of this analysis by a senior Home Office source telling the Times today that modelling carried out by officials had estimated measures to combat crossings would need to prevent as many as 85% of all attempts in order to destroy the people smugglers' business model. I mean, that is perfectly logical, but 8 in 10 attempted migrant crossings would need to be stopped if they're going to destroy the business model. They're not going to stop 8 in 10 migrant crossings by this scheme, are they?
No, and if they're hitting 8 in 10, just stop them all. Just finish that last 2 in 10.
Well, they need to get to that level.
This is a situation where you effectively realise that going after the people smugglers is something that is putting the cart before the horse and not looking at the root cause of this issue. Effectively, what this modelling does show is, A, how enticing actually it is for those people smugglers to continue engaging in this trade, and the risks are well worth engaging in, because actually really if there's a failed crossing, it's not them that reaps the consequences. But then also it is the sheer preparedness of individuals that are looking to come to Britain and their willingness to get into hand in glove with these people smugglers and to take those risks, even if the odds are, 7 in 10, 8 in 10. This is something that is real incentive for individuals to come to Britain at this point, and we have to really start to unwind that, because at the moment it is absolutely prolific in the sort of communication networks, and there's a pull factor that does take place when you have an existing large illegal migrant population where they're beginning to communicate with other individuals as well, and therefore the flows continue. We have to break that completely, and again, I'm tired of saying it, but we need a strong deterrent and a strong deportation plan to do that.
I wonder how you contrast the thoughts of Rishi Sunak just over a year ago, this sort of plan, stop the boats. This one that the Labour Party seems to be bringing in, we keep hearing new bits of policy, little bits here, little bits there. I mean, the one, for example, the 5 years for putting something on TikTok, I just think I'd be really interested how many people are actually convicted of that crime in the next few years. This sort of patchwork of ideas, does that in any way start to tackle this problem, Robert?
I really don't think so. I think, you could often say we're kind of building up a wall. They're building up an infrastructure that they would hope would eventually prevent individuals from coming in. But the problem is there's a gaping hole in there that they are completely ignoring. I think Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives focus on a big grand scheme that was kind of the monolith around which you could then build those other piecemeal approaches to tackling this is a far more appropriate and a far more effective, and one that frankly just recognises how international migration works in the 21st century than what the Labour Party doing little bits here, little bits there. How many people around the world, how many illegal migrants, would-be illegal migrants, are looking at sort of Keir Starmer today, or looking at that piece of legislation that they introduced last week and thinking, oh, that's me done for, there's no point me even trying.
Yeah, exactly. Where is the fear factor here? Where is the sense that anybody will actually say, well, I was planning to cross the channel, but I'm actually not going to do that? I mean, I'm not convinced any of this really adds up to a hill of beans.
No, it really doesn't, and this is the problem. I mean, we can keep shouting over the next 4 years, but the Labour Party have really put in stock this idea that they are the grown-ups. They got so sort of cautious with what the Conservatives ultimately fell on their sword when they really died by the sword of the Rwanda scheme, that they've gone so far the other way to avoid that similar fate that we're effectively ending up with nothing. We're ending up with bits of wisps of smoke being thrown up in the air with no real concrete solutions being put forward.
Robert, thank you. That's Robert Bates there from the Centre for Migration Control, where he's the Research Director. Just want to take a call from Jez in South Kent. Jez, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
Just a set of background. I live in a little village in South Kent, about 7 miles from Dover, about 7 miles north of Dover. And over the last 6 years, I live right on the beach. I've had a front-line view of what's been happening with these migrants. And going back 5 or 6 years, the boats were coming across at night, early morning, dumping the boats in the village, going up through the village and disappearing. And then what started to happen, Peter, was that as they realised they didn't have to risk their lives coming all the way across, they simply get halfway, get picked up by the RNLI or the Border Force. What this new rule is going to do, though, is that they're going to want to try and avoid getting picked up because they'll have to go into the system. They could risk being sent back.
So you think they'll just go back to the way to the way they did it before, Jez?
But far more will come across who won't even enter the system. They'll just disappear through the village and all the other villages and up into the hinterland, and we'll lose track of nearly all of them.
So actually the innovation could be regression to what they did previously and a system that worked previously. I mean, it just seems to me in every single time that these systems, any change that the government seems to make, the migrants and the gangmasters and those coming across seem to just find a way around it, Jez. It must be very frustrating for someone who lives in that area.
It is, and I keep hearing this slogan, smash the gangs. What Starmer and his crew need to do is to smash the market. Not the gangs, it's the market, it's the pull factor. That's what has to be done, and that means getting rid of the pull factor and stopping making it easy and sending people back. Simple as that.
Yeah, very good points there, Jez. Thanks very much indeed for your message. You can join Jez on the air, 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk to Mike Neville in a second, former Metropolitan Police detective, about all sorts of issues, including the very thorny one of the police revealing suspects' nationality. That is something even we here at Talk have experienced the two-tier system of. I'll tell you more about that in a second when we talk to Mike. Stay with us here on Talk.
He was the nicest guy around. He never stopped to spare anybody time. Newcomers like yourself, he was always there to help. Me and him, we used to have a few rows on air sometimes. So he was a great friend. He was a good guy to young people in the industry, because I think he loved the industry as well. So we have lost a legend.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So you'll remember that horrible incident in Liverpool a few months ago where there are active charges in this, so I'm going to be really careful what I say. But what happened was that a car was driven into a number of people, and of course there are people who had horrible injuries there. Thankfully, no one died. But what we were told very, very shortly after that, literally within a couple of hours, was that there was a white British man was involved. 53 years old, I think, was the person they were looking for anyway. That person has subsequently been charged with offences related to that. So we're going to be really careful what we say. But I just give you that example in regard to the fact that we were told there was a white British man. Now, on the Saturday, I was on air again. So I was on air on the Monday when that happened. I was on air again on the Saturday. And at the time, what happened was thankfully much less serious, but nonetheless relatively similar type of incident where someone driving a car careered into a few people, a few pedestrians. Now thankfully far, far fewer than in Liverpool, but dreadful for everybody involved in that incident. That happened in Leicestershire, and we contacted Leicestershire Police and said, well, they told us in Liverpool, so can the Merseyside Police told us, in fact they told everybody, so can they perhaps tell us what the Leicestershire suspect, his ethnicity? Now, I didn't care about the ethnicity. I cared about the people who were affected by that very sad incident. But to keep it equal, to make sure that everything is out in the open, a similar incident, a similar sort of thing, although on not as large a scale, they gave us the fact it was a man, they gave us his age, but they didn't give us his ethnicity and wouldn't. And we asked a number of times for that ethnicity, and over a couple of days actually, and we're never told the ethnicity. Now, someone has been charged in relation to that incident as well. Again, I'll be careful about that because I don't want to prejudice the trial. But it turned out that suspect and the man who is charged is a member of the Sikh community. Now, it doesn't matter that he's a member of the Sikh community. What matters is that we weren't told. Now, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, says that police should reveal suspects' nationality. I agree with her. Mike Neville is with us. He is the former Metropolitan Police detective. Mike, it would make perfect sense and would be perfectly helpful to many, many people and actually just give us a bit more information that we should have if the suspect's ethnicity was revealed. We were told that it was a white British man in regard to Liverpool. We weren't told that it was a Sikh man who was allegedly involved in the incident in Leicestershire. And there have been numerous other times when the ethnicity would have been helpful, or at least just more information. What are the rules around this? And what do you think the rules should be, Mike?
There are no rules at all. There's nothing written down about this at all, Peter. It's down to the individual press officers and the like. But there's a real fear in the police. Now, if you remember back to the 90s, Sir Paul Condon revealed that the vast majority of street robberies in London were committed by young black men. And I take some responsibility because that was my research for a degree that revealed that. And I gave them to the Commissioner. And he was absolutely castigated for revealing those facts. And people have become more and more afraid of telling the truth. We saw in Southport how things were concealed, and what it does, it creates a vacuum, and thereby other people fill that vacuum. And what people have sussed out really, if the police don't say that somebody's white, then they're obviously not white. And it just creates real problems. And what it does, it stifles debate. And there's a real debate to be had here, because Trevor Phillips, the award-winning black journalist, pointed out, he did an excellent TV show about how different ethnic groups commit different crimes. And this allows you to deal with things. And we've seen recent information where some members of people from like Afghanistan commit far more sexual offences than the average.
Proportionately, absolutely. And actually,
and one of the best stats I've seen recently, I got these from The Spectator, that in 1951 in London there was 200 robberies reported in 1951. In 2023, there was over 30,000 robberies reported in London. London. And it's a legitimate question to ask. Given the population has only changed from 8 to 9 million people, what changed between 1951 and now has driven the fact that instead of 200 robberies reported, there's now 30,000. And people are seeing what people see with their own eyes. They're then told by politicians and even members of the royal family that diversity is our strength. And people are saying, well, look, sometimes I see this and it isn't right. So I think it's correct that we get the facts, because we can't deal with a problem unless we know the truth.
And this has all come in the wake of an alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl in Nuneaton in July. Downing Street has said that all authorities, from police to central government, should be as transparent as possible about those charged with crimes such as rape and sexual assault. Government sources have suggested to The Times this would help rebuild public trust. Now, Nigel Farage yesterday accused officers of a cover-up after Warwickshire police refused to reveal the immigration status of 2 men arrested over this alleged attack I've just mentioned there. He said rising public anger over migrant hotels was visible at protests across the country. I think that there has to be transparency here, especially if you're going to give some transparency. It can't be a partial thing. You can't be slightly pregnant. It's an idea that if you're going to give the ethnicity of these suspects, you should give all the ethnicities of the suspects. You should say, right, we're going to deal with this. We're going to say, in these particular serious crimes, there are lots of crimes where press releases are put out by press officers of lots of different forces around the country. And the fact is there is just no consistency there at the moment. Do you see this changing? Because Downing Street can say what it wants, but if the rules are not there, and of course police forces are operationally independent as they should be, but they can set policy in this regard.
It's what happens is, as you say, it's each different press office have ridiculous rules, and they will try and enforce them. But also you've got police chiefs who come from the same sort of liberal left establishment as many politicians do, and they're almost traumatised by the fact that ethnic minorities might commit crime, and they really don't want to say it. And it also has operational impacts. I was reading in the paper today that was a sexual assault in late on Saturday, or very early on Saturday morning in the middle of Devon, and there's no description of the suspect. Well, how can anybody know if they've seen anything if you don't describe the suspect?
Yep.
And the police are saying, oh, we're questioning the victim. Well, you've been questioning the victim since Saturday. Surely she's given some kind of indication of who has done this. Yeah. And so it's unhelpful for the police as well, but there's absolute fear. There's an absolute fear of being accused of racism, Peter. That's throughout the police. The worst thing you can be called is racist, and as a result, you don't get promoted. And this is the issue, I would say.
Mike, I just want you to look at a piece of footage for us. This is a man who casually brandished a firearm at a group of teenagers in McDonald's before aiming it at a police officer. He's been jailed. I'll just explain it for people who are listening on the radio. Many people, of course, can see it on the screen, but the guy comes over with some McDonald's food there. He's wearing headphones. He has a flak jacket on there. He opens it up. You can see the gun there. He starts eating his food. Bit later on, he brandishes the weapon. He shows the weapon to the people sitting beside him. They start to question him. He talks about it. He continues eating his burger at McDonald's, and then later on brandished the weapon at a police officer who sort of tried to get behind a car to try to get away from him. He then ran away. This is in South Wales. They eventually catch up with him, and managed to arrest him. He's since been jailed for this for 4 years for carrying the weapon in a public place. There was a group of people at the McDonald's who had noticed his stab-proof vest and the fact he'd been staring at them. One of the groups asked this guy, Jacob Jenkins, if he was a police officer. He replied Marines. Before taking out the pistol he was carrying and showing it to them. Concerned for their safety, the group left the restaurant and called the police very wisely. Jenkins then left and was stopped by an officer nearby. Instead of surrendering, he pulled the gun and pointed it directly at the officer, shouting at the officer before fleeing the scene. He was later found at a nearby construction site, having removed his coat. This is absolutely shocking, Mike. What do you make of this footage?
Well, what I make of it is the first thing is the people who say, oh, you should be able to see if this is a replica firearm, then you face that replica firearm and you guess.
Yeah.
Because I think in the fact when it was discovered, it was a BB gun. So when people criticise the police for shooting somebody with a replica firearm, you watch that footage and how do you know that was a replica? The second thing it reminds me of is that there are, for all my criticism of senior police officers, every day there are junior police officers on patrol facing danger. And having read about this the story as well, as obviously the armed police officers have got hold of him. And one of the good things, it was a police dog that found that evidence. He concealed his jacket with those weapons, and of course you can always rely on the home to find things. And in my time in the police, if you had a suspect like that, a police dog was invaluable, and I've seen that the Met are cutting back on some of their dogs, and it just shows their value, this footage.
Tell me as well your thoughts about Donna Jones, Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, who has alleged a minister phoned her after she made controversial comments in the wake of the disorder about Southport, obviously a year ago now. She says she was pressured by a government minister to retract a statement she had made that mass uncontrolled immigration was not one of the reasons behind the rioting. Jones said the newly appointed Labour minister, who she decided not to name, told her, "You and I both know this has nothing to do with immigration," and asked her to take down the statement.
Well, firstly, I've pressured Donna Jones to tell us who it is.
Yeah.
Let's know who. My mother used to say, "Don't come to me with half a tale," but I don't disbelieve this happened. Donna Jones is well liked as a police and crime commissioner down in Hampshire, but what it just shows is the detached nature of the Labour Party in particular, but it really the political establishment. The idea they couldn't see that there was some issue with migration, the trouble in Southport, and all these rumours that there was an asylum seeker and the like. They just can't get a grip of it. And me and you, though, have discussed this in recent days, that there has been a change. The Labour Party are now seeing, I think, that mass-controlled immigration is a real vote loser. And if they don't get a grip of it, they're finished. And one thing that politicians like to do is be in power. So I suppose you can throw away all your beliefs and everything you believed in before to ensure that you get voted in. And I suppose it just emphasises the difference between the reaction to the protests in Southport and the like 1 year ago and the tactics of the police at the protests we see now, which is, I always say, it's summarised by the fact that they're wearing soft hats these days. Yep. And I think they've been told you cannot go cracking skulls, and the Prime Minister's certainly not been out calling all these people far right. So I just think it demonstrates the lack of understanding, firstly, last year, but secondly, the cynical way that politicians change things.
Mike, thank you as always. Mike Neville there, former Metropolitan Police detective. 2 bits of breaking news for you. One is that the chief executive of Ofwat, the water regulator, is to step down within months as Britain's embattled water regulator prepares to be abolished by ministers. David Black is preparing to leave Ofwat following discussions with his board led by their chairman. That is the chief executive of Ofwat to step down. Also breaking this hour, and arguably more significant, the former President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary have been subpoenaed as part of an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities. That is the breaking news, that the former President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary have been subpoenaed as part of an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities. We've seen in recent days that Ghislaine Maxwell, the lover of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, has been giving lots of information to the Deputy Attorney General in the United States. She has been moved to a cushier prison. She's moved from a tough facility in Florida to a less tough one in Texas. Has given lots of information, and that is the breaking news now, that the former President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, former senator, former candidate for president, of course, as well, herself, they've both been subpoenaed as part of the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities. We will bring you the latest on that. Any development between now and 7, and we'll discuss it properly a little bit later on in terms of all the different implications of the fact that Bill and Hillary Clinton have been subpoenaed as part of an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities. It would be very, very much a strange coincidence if it hadn't been directly as a result of Ghislaine Maxwell's evidence. We will see what more we can get on that. We're going to talk in just a second a little bit more about James Whale. Yesterday, of course, the programme, the drive, we did the whole programme on James Whale's death. The great colleague and friend who has gone. He very sadly died of cancer at the age of 74 after a long battle. Lee John joins us in just a second. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
In the break there, I've just been reading more of this detail about the fact that both Bill and Hillary Clinton have been subpoenaed as part of an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities. This is the House Oversight Committee in America, at Congress, requesting depositions from the Clintons and also asking the Department of Justice for files from its sex tracking investigation into the paedophile financier. The letter to Mr. Clinton details his ties to Epstein, including his close relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, his former girlfriend, who is serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell was moved from a low security federal prison in Florida to a minimum security facility in Texas. That was revealed on Friday after she spoke to the to the Deputy Attorney General for the Trump administration. The letter from the House Oversight Committee, this is the House of Representatives and the House Oversight Committee, by your own admission, you flew, this is to Bill Clinton, by your own admission, you flew in Jeffrey Epstein's private plane 4 separate times in 2002 and 2003. During one of these trips, you were even pictured receiving a massage from, in inverted commas, from one of Mr. Epstein's victims. The committee ordered Mrs. Clinton to appear for a deposition on the 9th of October and the former president on the 14th of October. Donald Trump, of course, has been under intense pressure to release the Department of Justice files amid long-running conspiracy theories that Epstein was murdered in his jail cell in order to protect a powerful cabal of abusers. We know too that the House Oversight Committee today has subpoenaed 8 former top law enforcement officials, including former attorneys general from the 3 presidential administrations. Names you might know like Merrick Garland, William Barr, Jeff Sessions, Loretta Lynch as well, Eric Holder and Alberto Gonzalez. So the key names, of course, are the Clintons, Bill and Hillary. That will be absolutely box office viewing. We will bring it to you, or at least some of it, here on Talk on the 9th of October and the 14th of October, finding out from the House Oversight Committee. Very tough questions for them, no doubt, about their connections to both Jeffrey Epstein and indeed Ghislaine Maxwell. Right then, I want to talk now to Lee John, who's a friend of James Whale. And just before I do, I want to play a clip of James Whale's final chat with his good friend and fellow presenter here at Talk, Ash Gould.
I'm here at James Wales' trailer park garden and he's having a little... Wales, all right, man?
No, what are you doing?
I brought some nibbles, man.
You know I don't like those. Take those away.
Not them. They're quite good.
I'm very ill. What are you doing here?
How are you, man? You all right? What's going on? You're not well.
Do you know, I find that when people ask you, you've got terminal cancer, and people
don't ask them how they are.
How they are is really annoying.
Because you'll get the right answer. Do you remember when we met? Do you remember?
You were an engineer.
Yeah, 1995, and they said we want to put you with James Wales, and I said, what? The director of Frankenstein, the 1930s horror movie, it's great. And they went, no, the rudest man in broadcasting. But I still thought it was great. Go on, have a crisp. Go on, bubbler. So have you anything to say about how great it is to be working with me for all these many years? It must have been amazing for you.
Do you know, I tried to find something to put in the autobiography.
But oh yeah.
I couldn't find one thing good.
There's more pictures of his horse than me. There's not one picture of me. There's a picture of his horse.
Say about you.
Yeah, nothing.
In the autobiography.
At least a little picture. Anyway, man. All right? Thanks for a great 30 years. I'm going to miss you, Bubba.
That's just lovely. That's just lovely. Real and important friendship between 2 great broadcasters, James Whale and Ash Gould. Well, Lee John was a very close friend of James Whale's. Lee, thank you for speaking to me today. I'm so sorry about your friend and about James. He was so nice to me. I didn't know him even 1% of how well you knew him, but he was just an amazing broadcaster, and I'm sure you're hurting today. But also, so many people have a smile on their face remembering James Whale.
Seeing that clip, he had great humour. He was very, I mean, he was not what you thought he was, you know, on radio, and he'd come out with the most outrageous things. But he's a genuine friend, genuine person, he was there for his friends. He was definitely there for his friends. He'd come to a lot of my shows. He'd support me when I was doing all different sorts of things. He would always greatly support him. I met James in the late 80s and with my group Imagination. And it's a very, very sad moment for me. In particular, last week when he was in the hospice, he actually rang me and to say goodbye. And I was in great shock.
That must have been a very difficult phone call for you. When you look back on your friendship, what will you remember now James is gone? What runs through your mind when you think of him?
Humour, some great humour, and we had great conversations, and we would have a lot of laughter. And his wife Nadine was by his side. She has been a strong pillar of support, and we'd sit together, have a last glass of champagne with our good friend Peter Straker, and just have a really good laugh. Because we look at the industry and laugh at the industry. You know what I'm saying? We'd laugh at it, but also at the same time, we'd have very serious conversations as well. He'd ask those questions that people don't ask, and it is a very tough moment. And as I said, he was always there for his friends. He had a great gathering last year, went to the palace, received his MBE.
It was so important to that. He was so proud of that MBE, and rightly so.
Yes. Yeah, and we were at Langham's, and the whole place was packed out with names everywhere. There were so many people that came, and I was so glad that I was there. And I went to see him, I think, last month at his house, and he was like you saw in the film just now, but his brain was still active. It was like you're thinking, no, he's not going to go. The energy is still there. Then he'd have a moment where he'd relapse a bit, and then he'd come back again. So I tried to, uplift him as much as I could. Very positive. That's my nature. Trying to keep him.
And he was so positive as well. Maybe that's part of the success of your friendship, that you were two really, really positive friends together.
Yeah, I think so, because that's what we looked at. We don't think of the past or what was. We think of where we're going. And even his journey talked a lot about when he would be passing, what he wanted for his funeral and things like that. But he did it with humour. Actually, he did it with a lot of humour. Myself and Peter Straker and Matt Goss to sing at his funeral. He was talking about, don't sing the songs, nor sing them with humour. Change the lyrics.
Yes.
What kind of fool am I? It was we're there laughing. He did have a wonderful heart, and as I said, my memory is like it's very tough because.
Well, listen, thank you. We're thinking about you and everybody who knew and loved James Whale today and in the coming days. Really appreciate you speaking to us. This Lee John there, he was a really close friend of James Whale. And if you, not everybody managed to get in yesterday, there were just so many tributes to James. If you want to pay one today, there is time. We will make time between now and 7. You can give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. You can send a voice note if you want to on the same number, or drop me a text on 87222, the word talk in your text. Lots of texts coming in, actually, including from Crystal. They said, I felt horrible for the officer that had the gun pointed at them. I wonder if some of the lack of patrolling comes from the concerns that the police are not well armed for incidents such as this. It's a very good point, Crystal. And actually, in Northern Ireland, every officer from constable or right up to chief constable is armed. That is because of the security threat there. Speaking of one in, one out, how about a new one in and the Labour government out, says this person. Brian says, I'm just curious to know, why do we need to know what colour or religion people are that commit crimes if they're English or British, if they are here illegally or immigrant? That's just come in, and I sort of get it if the person is born and bred here, but I don't see what difference it makes about his colour, creed or religion. Perhaps you could help me out. From Brian. Brian, I'm with Yvette Cooper on this, and that I want maximum transparency. If you're looking for someone, if there is a search for a suspect, for example, you need to know their ethnicity. And also, the police very specifically put out in the Liverpool incident the ethnicity of the person to dampen down different theories that it was someone who was perhaps an Islamist terrorist or something like that. It turned out that allegedly or apparently wasn't the case. So if you're going to use it selectively, you've got to use it across the board. So either do it not at all or with everyone, so there is equality before the law and equality in terms of the kind of information that is being put out into the public domain. That's what I say with that. We're going to talk more about Israel in a moment, because Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the Prime Minister there, has said some really interesting things on Gaza in terms of what happens next. There's about 3/4 of Israeli people who want the war to end. We also know that anti-Semitism is off the charts here in the UK as well. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
He was the nicest guy around. He never stopped to spare anybody time. Newcomers like yourself, he was always there to help. Me and him, we used to have a few rows on air sometimes. So he was a great friend. He was a good guy to young people in the industry, because I think he loved the industry as well. So we have lost a legend.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the horrible war between Israel and Hamas continues. We know there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We also know that it was sparked by the 7th of October horrendous attacks by Hamas terrorists, and we know that Israel is trying to eradicate Hamas. How should it do that? It's really interesting that about 3/4 of the population in Israel do want the war to end, but Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, under so much pressure on so many fronts in regard to what he does. He's been vilified by so many international players, including here in the UK. Hamas, of course, have welcomed the fact that Keir Starmer wants to recognise a Palestinian state. Let's speak to Dan Pfefferman, who's a former Israeli Defence Force intelligence officer and the founder of Middle East 24. Dan, you're very welcome to the programme. It's great to talk to you again. What do you make of what Benjamin Netanyahu has said in regard to possibly fully occupying the Gaza Strip. Is this the right idea, do you think, especially when there are so many in his own country, never mind abroad, who feel that the war should end very soon? Of course, the absolute priority for him has to be getting the hostages back, the 50 of them who are still there, 20 who we think are still alive.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big dilemma right now is the top priority, first of all, is getting these remaining 20 hostages out alive. We saw the pictures that came out this week that were absolutely appalling.
Oh, just horrendous pictures, just dreadful videos and still photos of people, one of them actually apparently digging his own grave and losing so much body fat as well, and just looking really, really emaciated, Dan.
Yeah, and they're clearly being tortured, and interviews with hostages that were in the same tunnels that were released said they would have to sit there and serve the Hamas terrorists full meals because they have full food for months and months and they have to starve. They're eating, he said, sometimes a can of beans a day or sometimes a can of beans every other day is all the food they're given. So Hamas clearly has food. They're not. We have a big challenge here. On the one hand, I think it's safe to say Israel very much wants this war to end. Israel didn't want this war to start, and that's something that the world seems to forget. I know you on this channel understand that quite well, but many in your country and many around the world really don't forget. Israel left Gaza in 2005 and it really did not want to go back in. The problem is every time, Israel is forced to fight multiple wars at once here. So first of all is the actual war against Hamas. And while Hamas has been weakened, I would say even militarily defeated to a large extent, Israel controls anywhere right now between 65 to 75% of Gaza. And due to both humanitarian considerations, the fact that Israel really doesn't want to harm Palestinian civilians,
I mean, there are loads of people around the world, Dan, who would say that that's not true. There are loads of people who would say, I'm not saying it, I'm just saying there are lots of people who would say that, and that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has not done the right job. Is there not evidence to suggest my thought on this would be, if you flood Gaza with loads of food, make sure everybody has enough food, if you let that aid in, well, then you'll actually weaken Hamas even further because they will not be able to use food as a weapon, and nobody will be using food as a weapon.
I agree, and that's one of the problems. That was one of the mistaken things that Israel did back in March. Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu here is trying to navigate between a very hardline coalition that in my professional opinion is just making strategic decisions that aren't smart, and they certainly don't translate well abroad. Trying to, on the one hand, defeat Hamas while having the IDF's hands restrained by its own limitations on trying not to harm civilian populations, fighting one war against a very brutal, very aggressive, ruthless Middle Eastern enemy, but still trying to act according to the norms of Western militaries or international law. It's very hard to navigate all these fields. The Israeli public is quite tired. The reservists who have been fighting, some of them serving 200, 300, 400, 500 days, are exhausted, as are the soldiers. On the one hand, Hamas has to be defeated here, and Hamas walked away from the last ceasefire attempt in Doha because it understands that its propaganda campaigns work. It understands that when it manages to get international pressure on Israel, and we saw that with your government, we saw that with the French, the Canadians, and others, then they pressure Israel, and Hamas can increase its demands or walk away from the negotiating table. So Netanyahu has to, on the one hand, talk as if he's going to reoccupy Gaza. He has to threaten. But on the other hand, it's not clear that Israel actually wants to do this. Israel,
what do you think he'll end up actually doing? What do you think will actually happen, Dan?
It all depends on how the international community comes together to pressure or not pressure Hamas. We saw last week that the international community came together after a Hamas propaganda campaign that there is organized, purposeful famine in the Gaza Strip and massive diplomatic pressure on Israel, and Hamas walked away from the table. We need to see that same kind of diplomatic pressure on Hamas itself, a terrorist organization. You saw the state of these two hostages of the last 20. All Israel wants is for the hostages to be released. Israel agreed and accepted a lot of compromises, agreed to a 60-day ceasefire to get these 20 hostages back. It's willing to release Palestinian security prisoners, these are convicted terrorists, and discuss the next steps afterwards. We need to see an international mechanism, international activity here, not pressuring Israel, as seems to happen every time, but pressuring Hamas, pressuring the Qataris to pressure Hamas, because that's the only way this ends. Otherwise, you have a war started by a terrorist organization that will end with that terrorist organization surviving and still in power. And that's detrimental not just to Israel, that's detrimental to all the moderate governments in the Middle East, and ultimately it's detrimental to those democracies and Western civilization if you allow a radical Islamist terror organization to start a war and then finish that war while still in power.
Dan, thank you for that analysis. Dan Pfefferman, then former IDF intelligence officer and founder of Middle East 24, I should say. Bill in Thailand has been in touch and says, "Hi Peter, the new plan from Labour on illegal migrants, their figures are only based on what boats land at Dover. What about the ones that land elsewhere? The ones who come on lorries?" Great show, says Bill in Thailand. Leslie also says, "How much are these deals with France and Germany costing us? And why is this deal only 11 months? And also, please stop calling it one in, one out. It is no such thing." Well, lots more to discuss in regard to migration. We'll do that after the news. I want to make sure we get more calls on as well. There'll be plenty of time for that, whether you want to pay tribute to James Whale, whether you want to talk about migration, whatever you want to do. Pick up the phone, use the break to do so, 0344 499 1000. You can drop me a WhatsApp voice note or indeed a text message on the same number.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Today's the day. It's all going to be solved. Everything's going to be absolutely perfect because Yvette Cooper's one in, one out plan is now being implemented, and migration is no longer going to be a topic we ever talk about in this station because everything's going to be fine. Yeah, that's what the government wants you to believe, and guess what? That's not the case. It's not going to work. It's going to be very, very difficult, and Yvette Cooper can't even say how many migrants will be deported this month. We're talking about all of that. We're talking about the deal coming into force. We're talking about Labour must stop 8 to 10 migrant crossings to break the smuggling model, even by its own Home Office analysis of that. Immigration is piling unsustainable pressure on public services. Really? Gosh, I hadn't noticed that. I think every single one of our viewers and listeners had, because guess what? They live in the real world, not the Westminster bubble of the Office of Budgetary Responsibility. We'll talk about the sport this hour as well, and make sure we make time for your calls as well. There's loads to discuss, including the breaking news that both Bill and Hillary Clinton have been subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee. This is in regard to the connections to the financier and paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Lots to talk about there as well. We'll talk to Colonel James Sunderland in a second about all these issues in regard to migration and what Israel should do. There are thoughts that it could fully occupy Gaza. Give us your thoughts on any of these topics. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk Drive. Well, let's just take a look back before we talk to James about what the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said. She explained the migrant deal that's come into force this morning. She spoke to the BBC.
The first time people who arrive on these dangerous and illegal small boats can be returned to France. They will be first detained. They'll be detained immediately on arrival and then detained and held until they are returned to France. And in exchange, we will take people who have applied lawfully, who have been through security checks and a proper legal process. I think that is the right principle. We're not setting out what the numbers will be at this point for two reasons. First of all, because those numbers will vary and will increase, and we haven't fixed an overall number for the scheme. We obviously want it to increase as much as possible. But also, secondly, because we're not going to provide operational information about which numbers, which days that the criminal gangs will then simply use in order to continue to ply their vile trade in human beings.
Well, Kemi Badenoch has responded. The Conservative leader gave her view. She says it's not a good deal.
This is not going to make any difference whatsoever. 50 at best migrants being swapped with France is not going to stop the boats. The thing that would stop the boats was a deterrent. The Rwanda plan, which we had, processing people in a third country, and if they got asylum, keeping them there, is what would have stopped people trying to come to the UK to claim benefits. There are many people who are claiming asylum who are not asylum seekers, and we need to make sure that those who arrive illegally are deported.
Let's speak to the military expert and former MP Colonel James Sunderland. James, good to talk to you this evening. Do you think this deal will make any difference, or will it make, as Kemi Badenoch says, no difference?
Peter, the Emperor has got no clothes. It's an absolute joke. Yvette Cooper is taking us all for fools. Let's look at the facts. This year so far, there's been 25,436 illegal crossings of people who are now residing in the UK. That works out at 908 per week. So this idea that we're going to swap 50 people per week, 50 back to France and 50 here, that the French don't want either, means that we've got a net inflow of, guess what, 908 people at the current rate. It's an absolute joke. And what makes me so cross is that I lost my seat to Labour. Labour promised to smash the gangs. Labour promised to sort this out. It's actually got worse under their watch, and they're taking us for fools.
She was asked, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, 4 times to answer if small boat deportations will actually start this month. And we have news as well from the Office of Budgetary Responsibility that immigration is piling what they term unsustainable pressure on public services. I would argue that we've all known that for a very long time, including when the party you were part of was in government. And actually, there have been successive governments, including the Liberal Democrats, including the Conservatives, including Labour, that just haven't got to grips with this. approach of Rishi Sunak was quite simply stop the boats. He failed to do that. Now Labour seems to have a sort of patchwork of different policies. Do you think any of them will be successful?
Well, Yvette Cooper couldn't answer the question 4 times, because when confronted with her own spin, even she knows it's ridiculous. In respective parties, I'm going to be really blunt by saying that I was the Home Office PPS for the last 2 years of the Conservative government, so I'm perfectly qualified to talk about the measures that were in place. And let's be clear, the Conservatives brought forward the Illegal Migration Act, the Nationality and Borders Act, and the Rwanda Safety Act. All of these were designed to unpick ourselves from European legislation and to take back control of our borders. These acts were working and would have worked had we got flights off to Rwanda. And in my view, the biggest failing of the last government, and there were several, was that we didn't get flights off to Rwanda before we called the election. And that, in my view, cost us the election victory. But what frustrates me so much is that the Conservatives didn't get it right on legal migration. We know that. But we were getting it right on illegal migration. And had we had more time in government, we would have fixed that and then fixed legal migration as well.
Can any immigration policy that is designed to stop the boats in some way, to stop people coming into this country illegally, can any of it actually work when we're still in the European Convention of Human Rights?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I mean, we left the European Union to take back control of our borders. That hasn't worked for reasons that we know. So I think Brexit was very much the first step on the way to doing that. Of course, for as long as we were subject to the EU open doors policy and the legacy of the Blair government, it wasn't going to work either. But in my humble view, we need to do some really serious things now. The first thing is we do need to leave the European Court of Human Rights. I'm very happy to say that. I couldn't when I was in government at the time because it wasn't government policy, but we need to do that. The second thing we need to do is that we need to detain every single illegal entry into the UK and then deport them. And make it absolutely clear that if you arrive illegally on UK shores, you will not be granted asylum, you will not be staying on the UK. This now calls for serious measures. The Australians have got it right, we now need to get it right. The UK is cashing cheques, is writing cheques that it can't cash. The cost to our services, the cost to our population is excessive. Let's fill our job vacancies with those who are currently unemployed in the UK. Let's not worry about those who have no recourse and no right to be in the UK. They need to go back.
You must be very frustrated that the United States, which apparently seems to have quite a successful way of dealing with illegal migration, has actually now formed an agreement with Rwanda, of all places, to take up to 250 migrant deportees. In fact, possibly even using some of the same accommodation that was earmarked for your Rwanda scheme.
I would hazard a guess that the Rwandan government right now is doing very well. But I'm being flippant. What was interesting with the whole Rwanda plan, what's interesting with it was that it would have worked. The plan itself wasn't great, we know that. It's not a plan you would choose to enforce. But the point is, it was a smoke and mirrors plan whereby it would have provided an effective deterrent for those coming to the UK. Those trying to cross the channel illegally who knew they were going to Rwanda, borne out by the facts of being sent to Rwanda, it would have stopped pretty quickly. And how ironic is it that that was the first thing that the Labour government did when it got into power, to kibosh the Rwanda plan, but the Americans are now doing it. It shows that the plan is viable, it shows that the plan would have worked. And in my view, yet another cynical attempt that shows this Labour government for how useless it actually is.
James, can I ask you about Israel? Because Benjamin Netanyahu apparently holding a 3-hour limited security meeting this afternoon. He has ordered, we're told, a full occupation of Gaza. Is that the right answer? Is that the right strategy, given that 3/4 of Israelis want the war to end? Of course, everybody wants the hostages back apart from Hamas terrorists. There are so many bits of international pressure, including from Keir Starmer. What is the best military and humanitarian action that Netanyahu can take now, in your estimation?
Look, it's such a difficult question to answer, and it's not for me to determine Israeli policy. it's interesting, isn't it, the fact that Netanyahu is considering this, probably because he knows he has not smashed Hamas, that Hamas are still operating there. But at what cost? I mean, the cost to the civilian population in Gaza has been appalling. The Palestinian question does need to be considered, no question about that. But in terms of the short-term military ends, I think we've proven time and time again across the world that it's impossible to hold ground, particularly in an urban environment. And the idea that Netanyahu is going to invade Gaza and occupy 100% of it with an Israeli occupying force, and therefore somehow suppress Hamas and solve the humanitarian crisis, in my view, is flawed. In terms of what he should be doing, I don't know, but quite clearly the current policy isn't working, and it may be that there is no solution to the problem of Gaza. It may just be that Israel has to build stronger defences, bigger walls, close all the tunnels, target Hamas when they know there's a legitimate target, and continue in the current vein. But what we do know is that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is not sustainable, and we've got to just...
Expert, former MP, giving us his advice. He was an advisor to, in parliamentary terms as an MP, to the Home Secretary under the Conservative administration as well. Thanks to Warren in Telford, who sent me a WhatsApp. He says, "Good afternoon, Peter, love the show. On the subject of migrants being put up in hotels, let's be honest, if someone arrives here illegally or with no proper ID, the process should be straightforward. Take their fingerprints and DNA, confirm who they are, send them back. After all, if you arrive at an airport with fake documents, you're put on the next flight back. So why is it different just because someone arrives another way?" It's a very, very fair point. Leslie says, "What information do we have of the criteria the French deem is acceptable to allow the migrants to enter the UK? For example, are they not eligible for any benefits or housing?" Colleen says, "One in, one out. Let me get this right. The government decide the 50 that are going to be returned, and then the human rights lawyers get involved with appeals to their probably going to be housed here for the next 5 years waiting for that appeal. They want to win, but the government want their side of the bargain kept. The French want their side of the bargain kept, so they bring them over. So in the end, we end up with twice as many. God save us from this government." Tad says, "If I had my way, I would prescribe the Labour Party to stop them doing any more damage. Socialism has never worked and never will because it's a flawed ideology," says Tad. Let's speak to Mike in Warwickshire. He's given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Mike, one in, one out. Will it work?
Well, no, because you bring one comes in illegally, so then you swap that for one that's done the paperwork. However, they're not going to be a doctor or anything that we need here. They're going to be exactly the same as the one on the dinghy. Then when they get here, we're going to have to house them and still do all the things that we did for the other one. So it's a smokescreen. That's all it is. It's a very, very simple smokescreen, and they're talking through the hat. And by the way, if I remember rightly, you're supposed to, if you leave a war-torn area, you're supposed to claim asylum in the first country you come to. That is in a state of flux.
Well, it just comes back to the fundamental argument that France is a safe country. You know, that's just fundamental argument there.
Yeah. So why he's signed this so-called groundbreaking deal? Because if at the end of the year 1 million people have come over on dinghies, and we've sent them back to France, and 1 million people have then come in from France, how many people less have we got in the country?
Well, at the moment, it's more like 50,000 a year rather than 1 million. But nonetheless, the point stands, doesn't it, Mike, that this is just tinkering around the edges here?
Yeah, they're pretending because they've got no idea what to do in this government. They keep on doing things which cost us money, which they did with the non-doms. You know, I agree with the principle that people with more money should pay a bit more tax. I agree with that in principle, but in reality and pragmatically, they're going to leave the country. Now, because they can, because it's a free, we're a free country.
They're highly mobile people as well. They don't have the same loyalty, often, some of them do, but the same need to stay in the same country. If you have a lot of money, it's easy to move countries.
Exactly. And then you look at everything else that they've done, and you just keep looking at it and going, so that's a good idea. You put people in jail for putting things on the internet for 3 years, but because the jails are oversubscribed, you then let somebody out who's a paedophile. That worked well. And then you turn around and you say these gangs, if we catch them, advertising stuff, we're going to give them 5 years.
Yes.
Well, first of all, good luck with finding them.
Yeah, exactly. And good luck with getting them extradited to this country, and good luck with convicting them. Because I'm going to say, Mike, I'm going to say it right now at 17 minutes past 5 on the 5th of August, no one will be convicted of putting something on TikTok. Not a single person will spend 5 years in jail for putting something on TikTok under this new legislation. Not a single person.
That second part was 100% right. Because he's done it, we're going to be tough, 5 years. Well, it's not 5 years. Because you give him 60% off.
Yeah. Or even sentenced to 5 years, yeah.
So you sentenced to 5 years, but what did he do? He did 2.
Well, also, if you're a foreign criminal, you only serve 30% of your sentence before they deport you. So that's, what's 30% of 5 years?
Because my son likes chicken nuggets in this country.
Yeah. Year and a half.
The whole thing, it's so flawed.
Even if they get sentenced to 5 years, they spend a year and a half behind bars. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It's also not going to happen, Mike. It is not going to happen.
And finally, my last point with this government is, I'd like to see how big the black hole is that they're making with the Chagos and everything else.
Yeah.
It'll run into the many billions with the rises that they've given out without asking for anything in return. For all of these other things that they've done, and they've absolutely achieved nothing, because the doctors are going out on strike again, the train drivers are going out on strike again. So with all of this that they've done and the billions of pounds that they're now racking up in debts, just out of interest, where's the money going to come from?
Well, I think we both know the answer to that, Mike, and the answer is you and me on the taxpayer. Mike, thank you so much for your thoughts there. Stephen in Glasgow, 0344 499 1000. Steve, what would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter.
Hi there.
First of all, I just think every single person, I just want to say this, every single person that talks should hold their heads high after yesterday and the tribute every single one of these done to James Swale. Absolutely phenomenal effort.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I just hope we did him proud, because he did us proud for a very long period of time.
He's done him proud, Peter, and do you know what the thing was? It was from the heart, every single person, and it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well done.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate that.
Anyway, no problem. I've got a couple of points, Peter, if you bear with me, right?
Go ahead.
I come from Scotland, right? So using England, I've got it easy, because you have not got the SNP, right?
Okay. No, I'm not sure Labour are much better than the SNP, but nonetheless.
Oh, trust me. I mean, the Labour are. It's just hard to believe. We've got a river in Glasgow called the River Clyde, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a very famous saying in Scotland, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's when somebody thinks that you're stupid, they say, do you think I came up the Clyde in a banana boat?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. In Northern Ireland, we say, do you think I came up the Lagan in a bubble? Yeah, similar.
Yes, right. Now, does Yvette Cooper, right, who really think that the people in this country are absolutely stupid? Because that's the only thing that actually holding the people in this country, they're content with their job. The first job of doing anything is to protect the borders and protect the citizens.
Yeah.
How can somebody possibly tell me that allowing 50,000 illegal immigrants, potential terrorists, to come into this country, they're doing stuff to our young ladies?
But Yvette Cooper says, Stephen, Yvette Cooper says she's sorting it out. She says she's the one that can sort it out through her schemes. What do you think of that?
Yvette Cooper doesn't know what day of the week it is, never mind sort something like that. You know, let's be honest, the woman is absolutely thick as mince. You know, I work for a living, Peter, right? I'm 54 years old, right? I started work on a YTS scheme when I was 15 years old, and I've worked every single day since that day. Never missed a day, right?
Okay.
I've worked my way through jobs, I've been promoted, and I've got a really good job with a good wage right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I earn roughly about £45,000 a year. Good wage.
Great stuff. Yeah, that's good.
After that, I've got up every morning and went to my work. I've had 3 days off sick in 32 years, right? So...
And there's so many people like you, Stephen. I've got to go to a break, Stephen, but just finally, there's so many people like you who've contributed to this economy, who see people who haven't contributed to this economy getting all sorts of privileges.
Yep. And basically the way I'm looking at it now, Peter, this is the point I want to make, is I am at the stage now where I'm considering quitting my job, because why should I work to let these terrorists come into my country and do stuff to my children.
Well, I think a lot of people feel the same way, Stephen. That real level of frustration is there about people who do the right thing, and it leads me back to the question I often ask: what is the reward for doing the right thing? We're going to talk more about another group of people who have been shafted by this government, people who work hard to send their kids to private school. Now we know that parents are paying up to £500 million to beat the VAT rate on private schools. Really interesting topic. We're going to talk to Chris McGovern, the chairman of the Campaign for Real Education, in a second here on Talk.
He was the nicest guy around. He never stopped to spare anybody time. Newcomers like yourself, he was always there to help. Me and him, we used to have a few rows on air sometimes. So he was a great friend. He was a good guy to young people in the industry, because I think he loved the industry as well. So we have lost a legend.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I just want to read out a few of the tributes that have been sent in to James Whale. Sharon has said, "I'm very sad to hear the news about James yesterday. I started listening to Talk only a couple of years ago. I stumbled across the station whilst driving. It was James who was on the airwaves. He was interviewing a pro-Palestine guy, and I think he was from one of the unions with whom he was having quite a heated argument. I think I remember that particular interview, actually. He then showered him with insults and threw him out. This was the common sense that the more high-profile stations were lacking. It was refreshing to listen to, and in my opinion really had the sentiments of the nation. A relatable, common sense, down-to-earth guy who put a smile on the face of his listeners. His broadcasts will be greatly missed." Margaret in Birmingham says, "Sincere condolences to Mrs. Whale and the family, also to colleagues and friends at Talk, a brave and brilliant broadcaster. James Whale, thank you for the memories. R.I.P. James, MBE," says Margaret in Birmingham. Thank you for that. Lots of other people in touch, including Brittany from the USA, says, great show as always, Peter. My condolences to James's family and all of Talk. He was hilarious and honest to the core. I loved watching him with Ash Gould. R.I.P. to the legendary James Whale. We will, of course, return to some of those messages and your sentiments, including all the news as well today. But we're still reflecting, of course, on the 50 years of James Whale on the air. An incredible man, a gentleman who taught me a lot. I want to talk now about parents paying upfront to beat private school VAT raid. This is parents at Britain's top private schools defying Labour's VAT raid by paying fees in advance. Of course, there are lots of people who just cannot do that, especially if they are working maybe an extra job or even two. I remember speaking to a head teacher of a primary school, a private primary school at one stage. She said that a lot of her parents worked extra shifts, maybe Tesco delivery shifts, maybe Deliveroo shifts, things like that, to get the money together to send their kids to private school because they really wanted to give them the best possible start in life by sending them to private schools, and some of the local schools just not good enough in the state sector. Chris McGovern is with me. He's the chairman for the Campaign for Real Education, a retired head teacher himself, former advisor to the policy unit at 10 Downing Street as well. Chris, are you surprised that those who can afford to are actually putting this money forward, avoiding the fees? But then, of course, there's so many people who just can't afford to do that. And yet again, people who are at the lower end, who are struggling and making lots of sacrifices, get screwed by this VAT raid.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of Labour's class warfare. But if you want to screw the rich, this is not the way to do it, because what's happening here, of course, and it's sensible, is that people who have lots of money, they can pay the fees 5 years in advance, so they're not going to be facing the VAT. But many parents at private schools don't have that much money, and they can only plan 1 year ahead. So what's going to happen here is that the government are going to penalise those parents who are least able to afford to pay, whereas the very rich, of course, yeah, they can pay 5 years in advance, and they're going to escape the taxation. So, look, it reflects government incompetence, really. If you really want to hit the private schools and channel some money into state schools, you don't do it this way by letting the rich off, because this is what this is doing. It'll be challenged, of course, but really, I think the government got themselves into a difficult position here, because they're going to penalise those parents who can't afford to pay in advance. And often it's the parents of children who've got special needs, and they struggle to get their children into these private schools. So it's very unfair, and it's incredibly incompetent. And
if you look at Eton College, for example, fees are going to reach more than £63,000 for a child next year. The total money in its prepayment scheme in 2023 was 16.6 million. That has more than tripled to 52.7 million last year. These very rich parents are seeing the way the wind is blowing, seeing that VAT is coming in, putting the money in there. But it's when you go to places where the fees are a lot lower, well, actually, those parents are not going to be able to do that.
They're not going to be able to do that. And we know from the information yesterday that 50 independent schools have closed in the past year, and the numbers of children going to independent schools fallen by about 11,000 or so. But it'll escalate this. I think we're going to see in years to come other schools are going to close, and so that puts more pressure on state schools, because the children who parents can't afford the fees for independent schools, and certainly can't afford to pay too much in advance, they're going to use the state sector. So we're going to see classrooms getting fuller in state schools. That puts more pressure on state schools. So this is a bit of a cockeyed idea the government have come out with, and one has to wonder, why on earth are you doing this? Because we're pretty much the only country in the world where we actually tax education. And
well, I think we know why they're doing it, because the amount of money actually raised by this is negligible when it comes to the entire school's budget, and they've spent that money 3 or 4 times anyway.
That's right. And the irony is, Peter, that, and I'm not a supporter of the European Union or our membership of it, is that if we were in the European Union, this would be illegal. So many of those people who wanted to remain, actually, they must understand that had we stayed within the European Union, you would not have been allowed to tax education. So it's an odd contradiction there, isn't it, that we come out of the European Union, and what do we use the powers for? Well, for taxing parents. Well, this is not what we came out of Europe for.
Chris, thanks for your analysis of that. That's Chris McGovern there, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Thank you to him. Thanks also to the person who has sent in this message on text 87222 with the word talk in their text, saying, afternoon Peter, great show as always. Jason from Bristol here. We have had a house near us being used as a house of multiple occupancy for illegal migrants. They leave the house at the same time each day. Followed them yesterday and they walked into the Holiday Inn for food. I bet they're doing this all over the UK when hotels are full. It is crazy. Also, another person, Jane, says, surely security checks should be done on everyone. This government are a laughing stock. Unfortunately, the public are not laughing. They are furious. Another person says it was heartbreaking to see the Israeli hostage in the tunnel there, and never so ashamed of a UK Prime Minister to have Hamas thank him for his decision to recognise a Palestinian state. He is no leader. Dorothy in East Kilbride. Dorothy, I haven't heard from you in a few days. Great to hear from you. Great show as always. Yvette Cooper is one of those one in, one out means nothing. Are this government so thick as to think the citizens of this country will fall for this? If they can detain one, they can detain them all. We have had enough. Well, major breaking news this afternoon that both Bill and Hillary Clinton have been subpoenaed. They're going to appear in front of the House Oversight Committee at the House of Representatives. That is after many of the allegations in regard to the Epstein files and the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell, his lover and facilitator of child sex trafficking, has been giving evidence to the Deputy Attorney General in the United Kingdom. We're going to get both Democrat and Republican thoughts on this after the break. Huge story. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for your company. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell, and there's loads to discuss today, including the Clintons. Both Bill and Hillary have been ordered to testify in the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The House Oversight Committee has requested depositions from both Bill and Hillary Clinton and asked the Department of Justice for files from its sex trafficking investigation into the paedophile financier. The letter to Mr. Clinton detailing his ties to Epstein, including the close relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's former girlfriend, who's serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. Very recently, she gave evidence to the Deputy Attorney General in America. She's been moved to a cushier prison. This is major breaking news today. Robert Wiener is a former spokesman for the Clinton and Bush White Houses and was a former member of the committee that made this decision. Robert, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of this?
Peter, thank you so much for having me. And I was actually the spokesman for this committee for 6 years. But we did things like failures in weapon systems. We did real investigations on things that mattered and made a big difference on the Patriot missile and B-1 bomber and so forth. But now they're into total politics. What this is, and I know the strategy is they want to subpoena the Clintons, and then when they don't cooperate, they're going to hit them with contempt, and then they'll use contempt as the issue, and that will be the big flood of news that they try to create.
Don't the Clintons have questions to answer here? Don't the Clintons have questions to answer here, Robert? We know that by your own, one of the letter to Bill Clinton says, by your own admission, you flew on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane on 4 separate times. During one of these trips, you were even pictured receiving a massage from one of Mr. Epstein's victims.
And so Donald Trump is on at least 17 times in the files, according to the Wall Street Journal. And I'm sure that this committee is going to subpoena, I'm sure they are going to subpoena all of Trump's work too, right? All of his involvement, that they had 1,000 FBI agents redacting all the famous people so that they wouldn't actually do the people that were the perpetrators. They would only keep the victims victimized. And that's what's coming out all over TV. And it's a tragedy, and it's a horrific tragedy.
It is, but I just go back to my questions. I mean,
okay, that's aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln. How's the play?
No, it's not. It's the sense that saying you can talk about Donald Trump and that's all fine, but don't the Clintons
and all the victims being victimized more?
Yes,
and then
I totally accept.
Who was the
okay.
AA? I know what an AA does. An AA is the top assistant who expedites, because I've been AA to people.
Okay, I accept all of that.
Epstein stuff.
I'm not questioning any of that. I'm not necessarily saying it's not true. What I'm asking you is, don't the Clintons have questions to answer on this?
Doesn't Donald Trump have questions? And this is deflection of the president.
Well, you're deflecting because you're not answering my question, Robert. Don't the Clintons have questions to answer here?
Are you shocked that Bill Clinton was a bad boy?
I mean, it's different being a bad boy. A bad boy is having an affair with an intern who's over the age of consent. There are questions here about the fact that he was around a paedophile. I was subpoenaed
by Ken Starr to talk about that, let alone this kind of garbage. I just think, yes, he can answer, but Donald Trump has to answer. He's the president, and this is deflection, and it's an attempt to deflect. That is what it is.
Okay, Robert, thank you. That's Robert Wiener there, former spokesman for the Clinton and Bush White Houses. Greg Swenson is with us. He's the chairman of Republicans Overseas. Again, I'll ask you the same question, Greg. Don't the Clintons have questions to answer?
I suppose they do. I mean, they've had a lot of baggage in their life. You know, going back to Whitewater scandal and the travel office scandal and all these other people that have, you know, sort of been victims of the ambition of Bill and Hillary. And so I think they do. I mean, I can't, I'm surprised as anyone that they were subpoenaed, frankly. But, and I think
why are you surprised they've been subpoenaed?
I thought, you know, I thought, if anything, the Epstein case was being kicked to the side. You know, that's been quite a controversy the last 3 or 4 weeks, Peter, you know, that a lot of the, you know, sort of real MAGA people that you know, were really questioning the fact that they didn't release the files. And that's been a bit of a controversy. And then, of course, you had the Democrats pile onto that and saying, you know, they should release the files to the Justice Department. You know, this is after the Democrats sat on the files for 3 years while Biden was president. But I do think it's an issue that isn't going away. But I'm surprised that they started with the Clintons, because it just seemed that, you know, if anything, they were trying to dial it down and hope it goes away. And I don't think that's working.
Well, you're not going to dial something down by having depositions for Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton in front of the world's media. I mean, that is not going to go away. What about Trump himself? I mean, as Robert Wiener was pointing out there, he had at least as close a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein as the Clintons did.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's apples and apples. I mean, it's hard to say whether, you know, I can't compare the Clintons' relationship, especially Bill Clinton's. I haven't seen the specific numbers. You hear different ones. You hear, you know, that President Trump was on the plane 3 times. I know the Journal did a bit of an expose the Wall Street Journal did an expose a few weeks ago. So I don't know, but my guess is, again, I'm just guessing, that Bill Clinton spent a lot more time on Epstein Island or with Jeffrey Epstein. It looks like the president's interactions with him were all before anybody knew about any of the shenanigans that were going on. And President Trump, you know, basically terminated the relationship, and it also kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of the country club, out of Mar-a-Lago. So I'm just guessing that Bill Clinton has a lot more baggage there than President Trump, and we'll see.
What do you think the level of pressure is on Donald Trump to release the DOJ, the Department of Justice files on Epstein here? Because, as you say, this has reared its head again.
Yeah, there's a ton of pressure on him. And I think, they reconsidered. I mean, it was a campaign promise. And then I think the Justice Department probably discovered the same kind of concerns that the Democrats had when they were in charge and decided not to release it. But it's interesting that now the House, the Republican House committee is subpoenaing not only Bill and Hillary, but several other people involved over the years. The list is at least 5 people.
Yeah, quite a number of, I think there's 8 of them actually, the former top law enforcement officials, people, names a lot of our viewers and listeners will remember, people like Merrick Garland, William Barr, Jeff Sessions, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, Alberto Gonzalez. I mean, these are very, very senior people.
Yeah, that's right. And then also they subpoenaed the records from the Justice Department. So this is really interesting that it's Republicans subpoenaing documents. You'd expect them to do that to the Democrats, and I guess we shouldn't be surprised that they subpoenaed Bill and Hillary, but they've also subpoenaed the other people on your list, and they've subpoenaed the records. So this will be awkward, I think, for the Justice Department, for Pam Bondi and the Justice Department, because they didn't want to release these records, and now they're being subpoenaed by Congress. So I think you're right, Peter. This thing's not going away. So maybe just, being really open about it will be the best thing. And I think one more point that I think you and Robert, I think was his name, right?
Yeah.
Mentioned is that it's really the victims that should be protected here. And I think maybe that's one of the concerns with releasing these records. I mean, I guess you can redact, of course you can redact victims' names, but I do think there are other
ways certainly of putting information together and working out who was there at certain times and so on. You're absolutely right, Greg, and that's a big thing certainly when it comes to sexual cases. Certainly, Greg, thank you for joining us. That's Greg Swenson there, chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Lots of people getting in touch about all sorts of issues, but as well as that, as well as the big issues in the news, many people getting in touch about James Whale. And Gary says, I used to watch James on late night TV after a night out, and he pushed boundaries with his straight talking honesty. Rediscovered him on Talk, and he was still the same straight talking honest guy he always was. May he rest in eternal peace. Condolences to all his family and friends. And Peter from Croydon has given me a ring on this and wants to pay tribute to James. Peter, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hello, Peter. Yeah. I saw a clip of James's talk show, and obviously on Talk, and this was about a UFO guy, and he had pictures of UFOs, but this guy got the ump because James was taking the mickey out of him.
Yeah, as he often did.
Probably being a rascal as he was, because James was into UFOs. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh, right, you do, because when I came home from work in the 90s, I put on the radio and I heard James talking about the Roswell case. And this was the first I heard of it, so probably James was responsible for bringing the Roswell story to England.
Well, certainly a number of people will have learned from his discussion of all of that, although it's a well-known case, certainly, Peter. When you think back on his broadcasting, what will you remember, Peter?
Well, I was working late, so I didn't speak to. But when I briefly spoke to him, because well, to me, it was so. His style was so, and I wanted to ring him up, but I thought, I'm going to be cut off here. But I rang up about Roswell, asked him a question, and he was brilliant.
Great, yeah.
It was just like talking to a friend, and it was so lovely, Well,
that's a wonderful tribute, Peter. Just like talking to a friend. That's I think what we all aspire to when we're having these discussions, when we're presenting. I mean, that's what James Whale did so very, very well. He was people's friend. He kept them company, and he told them things they didn't know. He entertained them. He was a great guy, and Peter, thank you for your lovely tribute to him there. Quite a number of other people getting in touch. Let me just read one more for the meantime, although there will be more between now and 7, I promise. Martin in Pontefract, who says, back in the day, in the mid-80s, James was at Radio Air in Leeds. He used to allow people to visit him while he was doing his late night show. A couple of friends and I would go in every other Friday, sit in on the show and share a pizza with him. He was an absolutely great bloke who had time for everyone and loved what he did. His singing left a lot to be desired, though. You only have to listen to the records he released. Rest in peace, James. We will miss you, says Martin in Pontefract. We'll continue to pay tribute to James Whale. We'll talk about all of the news together, of course. We'll get your opinions on everything. 0344 499 1000, and we will talk about the sport in just a second too. Stay with us here on Talk Drive.
The government needs to stop being a government of lawyers and actually tackle the immigration system, the tribunals, look at international laws and properly come up with a scheme that will actually deal with this and kill it dead, rather than just performative words like stop the gangs and then preside over an ever-increasing number of arrivals to this country. We just can't afford it. It's not like Rachel Reeves has left the economy in such a wonderful state that we can invite the world here to come and share in our prosperity.
He was the nicest guy around. He never stopped to spare anybody time. Newcomers like yourself, he was always there to help. Me and him, we used to have a few rows on air sometimes. So he was a great friend. He was a good guy to young people in the industry, because I think he loved the industry as well. So we have lost a legend.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of people getting in touch about the story we're going to talk about a little bit later on with Dominic Dyer. This is in Denmark. There is an appeal for live animals, for pets, to be donated to be euthanized if people don't want them, to be euthanized, to be fed as food for lynxes. I just think it's absolutely horrible. Angela says, what sort of people live in Denmark? Honestly, Dale says, if the zoo is appealing for animals to feed their caged predators, why not approach veterinary clinics for animals that have already passed for some unfortunate reason? Why take live ones to kill, unless they are lying and feeding caged animals poor unsuspecting live pets? Also, Amy says the Danish zoo asking for healthy, unwanted pets to feed its lynx. That's just wrong in my view. If you don't want or can't keep a pet anymore, then it should be rehomed. The article I read about it said that if owners pass checks to donate a horse, they can get a tax deduction. Yeah, it's a horrendous story. I think it's absolutely awful. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the programme, and let me know your thoughts. You know I'm an animal lover. In fact, I've written a book about animals that's coming out next month, and we're in a situation where, of course, we did Cat of the Week, and my great friend, my best friend, of course, is Jack, my cat. I know Ryan, the producer, has Hermione as well. We can't think of anything worse than this scheme. It would be absolutely horrendous. And if you can't keep an animal anymore, well, as that texter says, get it rescued. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But now we're going to talk about the
Sport Summary on Talk.
Charlie Wyatt is football editor at The Sun. Charlie, thank you for joining me today. The football transfer season is heating up. The big story at the moment is who is going to sign at Manchester United. Benjamin Sesko, who's leading the race, Manchester United or Newcastle? What do you think?
Well, I don't think either club really knows. I don't think Leipzig, the selling club, it's a funny situation. They're both bidding very similar amounts, and there's some sort of conversation over whether Manchester United that have bid today, 74 million, whether that's less than what Newcastle bid, which would obviously be quite weird. I think they're bidding, they're similar amounts, 74 million. And I think Sesko, Slovenian striker, real talent in Germany. Over the last 2 years, there's no player under 23 scored as many goals than him. He scored more goals than Jude Bellingham. So, he's a real talent. So I can see why Newcastle, who could be losing Alexander Isak to Liverpool, and Man United, who just need to bring in some better players, are both desperate for this player. It's turning into a right old saga. And I'm not sure it's necessarily going to end this week either.
Tell us a bit about Sheffield Wednesday as well. Sad state of affairs there for the Championship club. It's rumoured they may not even be able to field a team for the first match this weekend against Leicester. What is the situation here? Why are they in such difficulty?
Well, they've got an owner, and he's not the only one that's totally mismanaged the club. It's a famous club. It's a terrific club. It's a wonderful ground, Hillsborough, brilliant set of fans. They don't deserve this. No football club deserves this. In terms of the supporters, of course, the players, they've not been paid properly for the last few months. I still think the players have promised that they're going to continue and play this weekend. So I think that game happens. But Sheffield Wednesday's, future is in the balance. I still think something will happen. We've got Morecambe, who dropped out of the league. I think their future is even more serious, and they could end up getting kicked out of the National League this week, which would be a real shame because these clubs are so important for the community. It's not just about the fans that go and watch the team. It's everyone connected with the club, and it's really, really poor. But this is what you get when you get poor people that should not be overseeing football clubs, owning football clubs. It's not a surprise, and let's hope the government, the new law that's come in, will protect football clubs.
Well, that's a good point, actually. I mean, will the football bill regulator actually help this, do you think? Do you think this sort of situation could be avoided in future?
Yeah, it will be.
Okay.
Let's hope, because these clubs will all be licensed, and it'll be a lot more difficult to get a license. And once someone stops paying the wages, this person can just lose their license. At the moment, it's very difficult because they own a club, and it is more difficult. So, in theory, one of the big things about this bill will be stopping situations like that. I don't think it's going to have a great impact on the Premier League, particularly this bill. But this is what it's here for: to stop clubs like we've already seen in the past, like Bury disappearing, like Macclesfield disappearing, like potentially Morecambe disappearing. I hope Sheffield Wednesday won't disappear. I'm sure they won't. But this is one of the main reasons why the bill's been brought in.
Charlie, can I suggest a headline for you? Is that okay? Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
How about double Bilbao? Because we have two debate. Liverpool, big debate over playing two friendly matches in one evening.
So this is starting to happen more. Over the last couple of years. Quite a few teams on the continent, quite a few German teams are doing it now. Other teams, my team, I'm a Norwich fan, and they were playing double headers in Holland and Belgium. Different teams, but on the same day. And it's basically because if you're looking at Bilbao, their squads are so big, and if they're bringing their under-21s players as well, it just means they can mix and match let's say 40 players, 35 players. So they all get a game. It saves them from having to go to 2 different venues. So I know it seems a bit crazy, but in many respects it actually makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah. It gives everybody a run out, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe a player can play 45 minutes in one game, then Sarah gets in the afternoon and the course play half an hour in the next. So, yeah, it does seem crazy, but I think we're going to see a lot more of it.
OK, Charlie, thanks very much indeed. That's Charlie Wyatt there, who's football editor of The Sun. Thanks to everybody else who has sent messages in, including Les, who says, should Hillary Clinton be suspended as Chancellor of Queen's University Belfast until these matters involving the Clintons are clarified and the subpoenas are answered? Hashtag Clinton depositions. Glasgow Guy says, just to say, I completely corroborate what Stephen was saying on the phone a little bit earlier on. The SNP are indeed worse than Labour by far. Hard to believe, but it's absolutely true. And Ray says, apparently there's a section of the 1986 Public Order Act which police use to hide ethnicity. It basically says that information which may cause racial disharmony, then they don't need to publish it. Please tell Mike Neville. Well, I will. Thank you for that. Nick says, if you listen to Yvette Cooper's words, they will hold the migrants pending the return to France. That implies they will only hold the ones they are returning, or 50, so the rest will go to the hotels, etc. Waste of time, no deterrent. Graham and Bushy says, I'm sure the migrants in France are quaking in their boots with this one in, one out, with this one in, one out, hokey-cokey scheme. The chances of them being one of the 50 being sent back are so infinitesimally small that they will continue to be one of the hundreds coming here daily, says Graham. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi Cardi P, do you think we should reincarnate Churchill to protect our borders? With very little technology, they managed to protect our borders in the last war. Stacey in Wallington says, great show as always, Cardi P. Firstly, I'd like to send my deepest condolences to James Wheel's family and all of you. The question I'd like to ask is, with everything that we hear about migrants coming over from France, what is the journey and countries that they go to get to France? And what do these countries do, says Stacey? I think look the other way, as they know they're on their way to France, and then Britain is the answer to your question. Hi Peter, great response by Robert Wheeler about the Clintons. Nothing to see here, says Dawn in Chelmsford. Another person says these people who are paying private school fees up front are the same rich people who set up trusts so they don't pay inheritance tax, things the ordinary hard-working people cannot afford to do. And Michael says, I'm so sorry to hear about James Wheel's condolences, James Wheel I should say, condolences to his family and to Ash, who have been tuning into and really enjoying since 1995. Rest in peace, says Michael. Lots to discuss in the next hour as well. Do stay with us, because we're going to talk to Tom Jones, of the senior fellow at the Centre for Migration Control, rather than the singer, it must be said. Also, we're talking about Tories demanding an investigation into the social media spying unit. This is if you put stuff online that they don't like, that's against the government narrative. And we'll talk to Dominic Dyer as well, the welfare campaigner, about the zoo in Denmark that's asking for unwanted pets to feed to lynxes. It is absolutely horrendous, a total scandal. We'll talk about it in the next hour here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. It's just gone 6 o'clock. You're very welcome to the programme. Thank you for your company. Lots to discuss this evening in the next hour before Kevin O'Sullivan takes the chair. Yvette Cooper on illegal migrants, the pilot scheme, one in, one out. Will it work? We'll talk to an expert in migration in a second. Also, the United States sending 250 migrant deportees to guess where? Rwanda. Also, Bill and Hillary Clinton are going to be deposed. They'll have to give testimony, or they'll be asked to give testimony anyway, to the House of Representatives Oversight Committee. That's a big development and breaking news this afternoon. We'll talk about the Conservatives demanding an investigation into a social media spying unit. This is exactly the same kind of thing that looked into people like my colleague Julie Hartley-Brewer in regard to her views on COVID, for example, on lockdowns, the truth that she was telling in those things. Now the government's doing it on, guess what, migration. We'll speak to the animal rights activist Dominic Dyer a bit later this hour as well about the Danish zoo that has asked for unwanted pets to feed to their animals, to feed to lynxes. They're saying the unwanted pet should be put down and then fed as given as food to their animals. I think it's absolutely disgusting. And if you have an animal that you don't want for whatever reason, first of all, if you have an animal, you should try your very, very best to look after it. But if you don't want it, it should be adopted and given a chance elsewhere. It is just an absolutely horrendous story. We're going to talk about it with Dominic Dyer. We'll get your views on all sorts of things. People are ringing in on the ethnicity point in regard to police giving information about who has allegedly committed crimes, the one in, one out scheme as well. Lots of people want to get their voice on the air, and I'm going to get as many of you on the air as I can, as I always do with my shows. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. That number does those three things: voice notes, WhatsApp text messages, or phone calls. I would love to talk to you between now and 7. Lots to discuss. Stay with us here on Talk. And my colleague Kevin O'Sullivan will be here between 7 and 10, and I'll be here the rest of the week on Talk Drive, and indeed at the weekend on Saturday and Sunday I've got my 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. shows, so do stay tuned for that. I'm a busy boy at the moment, but it's great. There's lots of news around, there's lots to discuss. Let's get straight into it by taking a look at what the Home Secretary explained earlier today to the BBC in regard to the migrant deal. It comes into force this morning on that one in, one out scheme. This is what Yvette Cooper said earlier today.
The first time people who arrive on these dangerous and illegal small boats can be returned to France. They will be first detained. They'll be detained immediately on arrival and then detained and held until they are returned to France. And in exchange, we will take people who have applied lawfully, who have been through security checks and a proper legal process. I think that is the right principle. We're not setting out what the numbers will be at this point for two reasons. First of all, because those numbers will vary and will increase, and we haven't fixed an overall number for the scheme. We obviously want it to increase as much as possible. But also, secondly, because we're not going to provide operational information about which numbers, which days that the criminal gangs will then simply use in order to continue to ply their vile trade in human beings.
Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, has responded. She thinks the scheme just doesn't add up and won't solve the problem.
This is not going to make any difference whatsoever. 50 at best migrants being swapped with France is not going to stop the boats. The thing that would stop the boats was a deterrent. The Rwanda plan, which we had, processing people in a third country, and if they got asylum, keeping them there, is what would have stopped people trying to come to the UK to claim benefits. There are many people who are claiming asylum who are not asylum seekers, and we need to make sure that those who arrive illegally are deported.
Well, Tom Jones is a Conservative commentator. He's also a councillor for the Conservative Party for Scotland and Lower Wensleydale. Tom, what do you make of this scheme? Do you agree with your party leader that it won't make any difference? And if so, why?
Yes, I do agree with Kemi on this, actually. I think the key issue with this is the number of migrants that will be returned. That's obviously the key detail. Now, Home Office's sources at the minute say about 50, which will make the scheme more like 17 in and 1 out. So in exchange for those being returned, the same number of people or more will be able to come to the UK on a new legal route, provided they've not attempted a crossing before, and subject to very stringent documentation and security checks. But France won't be giving us any information about who is arriving. There's also the fact that activists are already lawyering up to protest this scheme. And so really, it's very unclear that anybody will be sent back at all. I think at the most it's going to be about 800 this year, and that is frankly a tiny, tiny fraction of the numbers that we need to send back, of the numbers that are coming over, which of course, Kemi was right to point out, have absolutely skyrocketed since we got rid of the Rwanda deterrent. And frankly, had flights gone off to Rwanda, that would have been a very, very, very successful deterrent indeed.
What do you think about withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights? Because there's so much policy that is being put forward by Labour at the moment. They're throwing a lot at this, they would argue anyway. They have a new policy every day, I think, at the moment. We're going to hear lots more about that. I mean, some of them are completely pointless. You say this one's pointless. The one I think is even more pointless is the one where they say people on TikTok who put up advertisements for coming to the UK, which is already illegal, by the way. We're going to get them deported to the UK. We're going to extradite it, I should say, get them tried and send them to prison for 5 years, which is not, I mean, that is just not going to happen. They are announcing lots of things on this, but I wonder if just fundamentally being a member of the European Convention on Human Rights means that the lawyering up that you mentioned there, the fact that there were so many legal challenges coming to the Rwanda scheme, there'll be more coming to this one in, one out scheme, as you correctly say. Is there anything we can actually do when we were still in the European Convention on Human Rights?
No, frankly, I don't think there is. I mean, you're right to mock the idea of making something that's already illegal.
More illegal. It's even more illegal.
But fundamentally, all these individual cases will be challenged in courts, and most of the deportations will be stopped using various articles of the ECHR by activist lawyers. And frankly, it is basically making our borders, not just our borders, but Europe's borders, basically impossible to police, to enforce. And it's increasingly difficult to see a way out. Now, it's interesting that the one country who has had a very similar problem to the one we face now, which is, of course, Australia, managed this problem, but was only able to do so because it sits outside of the ECHR. And they obviously had a deterrent scheme. That is where the original Stop the Boat slogan started. That was so successful that it's now completely cross-party, their strategy.
And the American example as well. I mean, there'll be lots of Conservatives, I would imagine, very annoyed today when, I mean, sort of praising Trump for doing so, because he seems to be actually clamping down on illegal migration, but actually sending 250 migrant deportees to the United States. The Rwandans are doing pretty well out of this, and presumably using even some of the accommodation that was earmarked for people who'd come to the UK.
Yeah, of course. I think that accommodation has actually been bought by the Germans now, who wanted to replicate the Rwanda scheme. So the deportations from the US back to Rwanda, I believe, are actually Rwandans. Now, obviously, it is a safe country, and it must be incredibly galling for the Conservatives to just look at Trump and know what might have been. The fact is that Rwanda is an incredibly safe country, and Trump can do this again because he's not in the ECHR.
I wonder what you make as well of the fact that you talked about people deep inside the Home Office speaking to various journalists, including the superb Matt Dathan, who's the Home Affairs editor of The Times, telling him that Labour must stop 8 in 10 migrant crossings to actually break the smuggling model. If you actually want to stop this, you've got to get a critical mass where people say, actually, this ain't worth it anymore, and 80%, 85% of those crossings. I mean, that is a huge task, and it's one that Labour doesn't seem to be anywhere near dealing with, nor were the Conservatives, in fairness.
No, that's completely right, and I also think you're completely right to point out our failure in this. You know, this did start under our watch, and fundamentally, you know, Labour are very much replicating the same problems that we were doing, which is rather than solving the pull factors, which is an overly generous welfare state, which is, to be fair to Labour, very slow processing, but also asylum application rates, asylum acceptance rates that are much, much, much higher than anywhere in Europe. So long as we remain the weak link on immigration in Europe, we will see channel crossings go up and up and up and up.
Thank you very much, Tom. Tom Jones there, Conservative commentator and indeed a Conservative councillor for Scotland and Lower Wensleydale. He's also the author of the Potemkin Village Idiot Substack. You can read his thoughts on all of these matters on there as well. Simon in Devon's been in touch and says the Labour Party are merely tinkering around the edges with solving the country's problems, whether it be illegal or legal migration, law and order, and the dire state of the economy. The one thing they're not tinkering around is realigning the UK with the EU, and I genuinely think it is Starmer's plan to blame all the country's woes on Brexit and offer the country a fresh referendum on rejoining the EU as part of his next election manifesto. That's the only way the Labour Party can win another term. Expect Brexit 2.0 to suck up all the oxygen out during the next election. Have a good day, says Simon in Devon. I don't think that's going to happen, Simon, to be brutally honest. We do know, of course, that he campaigned for a second referendum, which would have been a completely anti-democratic move. But listen, if I'm wrong, Simon, I will say so. Let's speak now to Alan in Salford on migration. Alan's giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Alan, you're very welcome to Talk Drive today. What would you like to say?
Well, Peter, I've been wanting to say this for a long while, a couple of years. This country's in the worst state it's ever been in hundreds and hundreds of years. We've had 100-year war, we fought with France, Spain, a lot of them. And we're the country, or the people of the country, they've actually been subverted in the last, 30, 40 years. First of all, with the nanny state. I'm afraid that's what started the rot. And then we got to the multiculturalism, I'm afraid, and that done it again. So, are you still there?
I am. I'm just listening to you, Alan. So you think things have just gone? This is a long decline. This isn't just the Labour government the last year. This is
long decline.
A long decline. Lots of things.
Don't forget, we fought a war in the 30s, and we kept battalions of Germans with guns, tanks, and the lot across that water.
Why can't we still? Why can't we still?
Well, we can't keep young males in rubber dinghies
and protect our borders. Why is that, do you think? I mean, you've mentioned the decline over the last few years, and is there any way to get it back, Alan? Is there any way to get it back, do you think?
Well, I'm sorry, we're going to need a draconian government who's going to say, right, that's your lot. Put the Navy in the sea and, push them back. And if they don't push them back, shoot the boats. I'm sorry, you'll have to shoot the boats. That's it, not the people.
Do you want migrants to actually drown, Alan?
No, I don't want migrants to actually. I want migrants not to come when they're not wanted, because let's get it straight. The people are all saying, this and that and the other about them. But they know they're not wanted in this country. They definitely know they're not wanted. Yet they put two fingers up at us and they say, we're coming whether you like it or not. They wouldn't have got away with that years ago. None of them would.
Yeah,
Nobody.
Well, we were a tougher country years ago. Listen, thanks for your call, Alan. I really appreciate that. Kevin in North Yorkshire. This issue of ethnicity, I think, is what Kevin wants to talk about. What kind of information we're given when suspects are apprehended by the police, Kevin. What do you make of this? Good to talk to you this evening.
Yeah, good to talk to you, and thanks for taking my call. Yeah, it's basically a response to a caller that you had earlier saying that they didn't understand why ethnicity had to be recorded.
Yeah.
Really, that mindset is atypical lefties. Now, I don't know if that person was, but
I think it was Brian, and I think he said I don't think he was necessarily objecting to it. I think he just wanted an explanation as to why it was important to know and for that to be out in the public domain. I mean, I think it is, and I think there's another two-tier aspect here, because if you give the ethnicity at all at any stage, well, then you've got to give it for everything, and you've got to give it. I would give it for all crimes, actually, Kevin. I would just put it in. You give the suspect age, for example. I mean, sometimes that's relevant, sometimes it isn't. What's the difference between a 45-year-old and a 55-year-old who allegedly commits a crime?
Well, yes, that's true, and it should be, and it always was that case. The problem is it stopped being the case because of ideology, and the problem being that if it was roving bands of Lutherans coming across on rubber dinghies, raiding across the channel, but we're talking about a demographic that is completely different in its makeup. And these people are proven now to have social issues that are so different from ours, and you know, their ideology is so different on so many levels. Now, if we don't know what these people are doing when they come into the country, we can't deal with the problems. You know, we've seen what happens when you try and mask those problems. You get the Rotherhams, you get the 50 other cities across the country where these problems come up. If you don't identify the demographic that's doing it, you can't deal with the problem.
Well, Kevin, you're right, and you're absolutely right. And what happens is that people suppress this stuff, and then unsurprisingly, it finds a way of bubbling up, and it unsurprisingly finds a way of becoming a problem. And I am, if you just do it completely honestly, completely straightforwardly. I mean, I gave the example earlier on about the 2 incidents involving. What I'll say to keep us on the right side of the law, a car that went into pedestrians, and one incident we were given the name, the ethnicity. We weren't given the name. We were given the ethnicity, the origin, the age of the person involved. Then something on a smaller scale, but it happened a few days later in Leicester. We weren't told. And it's that 2-tier aspect of things. It's the lack of it being all the same, treating us like adults, Kevin.
Well, the issue being is that we do have a problem, but they don't want to identify that problem because they are the authors of the problem. And the problem is that you know, if we had, as I said, the roving bands of Lutherans cutting off off-duty soldiers' heads in public, or bombing events in Manchester, or anything else, rape gangs, then we'd want to know about those individuals, be they black, white, Muslim, Christian, whatever.
Did you say Lutherans, Kevin? Did you say Lutherans?
I
know you are, but why choose Lutherans? And also, wouldn't it be a bit tricky for the Lutherans?
Because they are so placid, because they don't have a problem with roving bands of Lutherans, and probably never would. Well, and that's why I picked them, because it's obvious that we have a demographic that is so culturally different to us in so many ways, and the promise of multiculturalism being the answer to everything isn't and hasn't been, you know, and the fact that they wanted to rub people's noses in it that didn't believe in it has proved completely and utterly wrong. They've gone to such extremes now that they cannot admit that problem. They've created such an issue that they want to stop that problem being identified.
Well, listen, I think all of that makes sense, Kevin. I very much enjoyed your reference to the Lutherans there, Kevin. I mean, I think the key point with the Lutherans would be if they tried to nail the 95 Theses to the dinghy, you might puncture it.
I think you're probably right.
Kevin, thanks for your call. Really appreciate it. Ian has been in touch about the animals. We're going to talk about this in a few minutes' time. I want to donate my pet wasp. It was an impulse purchase. I saw it in a shop window, says Ian. I'm not sure you're taking this entirely seriously, Ian. I think the Danes are being horrific, horrible, absolutely horrible. We're going to talk to Dominic Dyer about this later. This is the idea that if you don't want your cat or your dog, you give it to the zoo, they put it down, then feed it to the lynxes. No thanks. First of all, I want my cat forever for the rest of his natural life. He's my best mate, Jack. And also, if you don't want an animal, well, first of all, you shouldn't get one in the first place if you're going to have to give it up. But also, like, lots of things happen financially and various different problems that people have where they have to give up animals. But it should be rescued by someone who wants it. I mean, it's a dire idea. It's a horrible idea. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We're also going to talk in just a second about the Conservatives demanding an investigation into social media spying. Stay with us.
it seems to me, that there are these thugs that turn up just when the politics are getting really, really awkward for the government. I mean, any government that isn't terrified of women and children turning out en masse to protest against something as sensitive as immigration policy is a government with its head in the sand, and I'm afraid actually that is probably what we've got.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right then, you may remember a few years ago, Julia Hartley-Brewer, my colleague here, and a number of others were targeted by a secretive government unit talking about views and looking into people's views on things like COVID, lockdowns, all sorts of aspects around that. Really sinister, really worrying. Well, now the Conservatives are demanding an official investigation into a unit that tracked social media posts during the Southport riots. Julia Lopez is the Shadow Technology Secretary. She's written to Peter Kyle, remember him from last week, the Technology Secretary, to call for the National Security Online Information Team to be referred to a committee for scrutiny. The Telegraph newspaper revealed last week that the unit had been used to flag content about asylum hotels and two-tier justice to social media companies at the height of the riots. The team wrote to TikTok to suggest some of the content was against the platform's terms of service and was spreading concerning narratives about policing in the UK. Concerning narratives. Well, concerning to them, other people might just say, you know, true, the fact that two-tier policing exists in this country. Jake Herford is a spokesman for Big Brother Watch. He's head of research and investigations there. Jake, I mean, this is some progress anyway, but the government's just going to do what it wants to do with this, aren't they?
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's great that Julia Lopez is calling for this investigation. I mean, it's great that she's calling for the investigation that her government brought in. Julia Lopez was a minister in DSIT until July 2024, and a lot of the egregious stuff done by this unit was done under her
Under
watch.
the Conservatives. So this is this hypocrisy from the Conservatives?
I think it's absolutely hypocrisy. Both Labour and Conservatives have been awful on free speech on social media. Both of them have used this unit to monitor political speech and flag potential removal from companies. So yeah, it's I mean, it's good to see them doing it, calling for this investigation. But some of the questions she's asked, the amount of staff, the number of pieces of content flagged for removal, are questions Big Brother Watch put to DSIT and had to go to the Information Commission to force disclosure. So the hypocrisy is really galling.
So have you got this information that she's asking for? Is it in the public domain already anyway?
For the date she's asking for, no, but similar information, yes, for sort of different periods of time.
So how many people are working in this unit from your information, from the time that you were asking for it from, Jake? Just tell us about your inquiries into this.
So as far as we're aware, the number had dropped significantly. Its peak during COVID, as one might expect, and that has come down to I think it's around 10, give or take, off the top of my head. And then during COVID, we were seeing about 2 pieces of information every day reported to the platforms, potential removal. That then had dropped to around 1 a week. In 2023, I think that has likely gone up again. I still haven't asked for that most up-to-date information. That information is likely to come out.
I mean, the point is that the police are meant to monitor this stuff. They're meant to say, right, you know, if there's someone saying, we're going to have a riot, it's going to be at this point, we're going to attack the police, that is or property or people or whatever, the police should see that that's clearly illegal and stop that. This stuff isn't illegal. This is just stuff that the government disagrees with. People saying, for example, there's two-tier policing in this country. I mean, there is. They may not like us saying that, but there's this thing which you know far more about than I do, despite the fact I'm talking to you from the home of free speech, Jake. Free speech. We can criticise our governments. We can say this is wrong. We can say that we don't like what they're doing. And this really concerns me. Even if it's only 10 people, this really concerns me that our taxpayers' money is being used to monitor this kind of stuff, that actually it's either illegal or it's not, actually.
I think you're exactly right there. You'd expect the police and the government to look for unlawful content online. You'd probably expect the government to monitor for things like hostile foreign state, kind of coordinated actions trying to undermine British national security. What you don't expect the state to do is look at lawful but potentially unsavoury stuff online. And this is what's happening. This is what happened to Julia during COVID. She was opposing the government's policies, and she was flagged in there. Peter Tatchell, a campaigner, was flagged in one report I saw for criticising the monarchy. Caroline Lucas, the former Green leader and former MP, was in a report by a military unit doing similar stuff for criticising Boris Johnson's COVID policy. So this stuff has just been political criticism. And Big Brother Watch has been calling this unit to be investigated and to be shut down for years. And we welcome the Conservatives backing this, and we welcome them calling for oversight from the Intelligence Security Committee. We just wish they'd done this years ago when they had the power to do it, rather than doing it with the benefit of hindsight.
I'm sure pressure from us, pressure from you, pressure from Julia Lopez will help in some way. But could it actually be the Americans who make some progress on this? Because Donald Trump, also the Vice President J.D. Vance as well, they have spoken out very loudly, very clearly on this and the threats to free speech, not just in this country, but in many parts of Europe.
I think the Americans could have an impact. We've seen with the Apple encryption battle, sort of that seems to be leaked through the White House, through White House sources, and American concerns about free speech do seem to resonate over here, whether that's through access to information or just making it part of the conversation. I mean, sometimes the Americans don't get, we have a slightly different culture here, but their pressure is definitely welcome. So we need to hold the governments to account, whether Labour or Conservative, for monitoring lawful, even if unpleasant speech online. We have the freedom to say this stuff. You and I might not say it and might not like it, but it doesn't mean it's illegal.
Listen, thank you. Hopefully this is abolished ASAP. Jake Herford, their spokesman for Big Brother Watch. He's head of research and investigations for that organisation. Thank you to Neil in Labour-obliterated Wales, as he calls it. What the Tories need is an investigation into why they did sod all for 14 years. And another person says, how can you ask for witnesses to any crime to come forward if you're not told the age, description or anything else about who done it or who allegedly done it? This country has gone crackers. Bring back Shaw Taylor is what that person says. Well, listen, thank you for all your comments. There's plenty more to discuss in the next half an hour before Kevin O'Sullivan is here with the Political Silent between 7 and 10. We're going to talk about this story which caught my eye today. It is just absolutely horrendous. Absolutely should not be happening at all. This is a Danish zoo which is saying that they want healthy animals, healthy pets who people no longer want to be euthanized and then fed to their animals. We'll get plenty of thoughts on that and plenty of condemnation, not just from me, but from Dominic Dyer, the animal welfare campaigner and chairman of Nature 2030. I want your views on this too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we're going to talk now about a zoo in Denmark asking for unwanted pets to feed its captive predators. Yes, really. This is Aalborg Zoo in northern Jutland, issuing a call for small, healthy animals to be donated to ensure, as they put it, nothing goes to waste. In a social media post, the zookeeper suggested the animals would be fed to their contingent of European lynx. Chickens, rabbits and guinea pigs form an important part of the diet of our predators, the zoo said, especially the European lynx, which needs whole prey that resembles what it would naturally hunt in the wild. Owners could donate a maximum of 4 animals, zookeeper said, which would then be euthanized before euthanized before being used as food. It's also accepting donations of horses to be fed to its animals, provided they are accompanied with the correct paperwork. Wouldn't want them to be there without the correct paperwork. In Denmark, horse owners can receive tax deductions in some circumstances while donating animals to the zoo. This is just outrageous, absolutely horrible. And there was outrage last week when Nuremberg Zoo in Germany killed 12 healthy baboons, citing overcrowding in their enclosures, then fed them to lions, tigers and wolves. Unbelievable. Dominic Dyer is with us, animal welfare campaigner and chairman of Nature 2030. Dominic, this is grim, isn't it?
It is indeed, and I also work with the Born Free Foundation, of course, and as you know, we've been campaigning for many years to say that zoos are not good in terms of treatment of animals, wild animals, particularly big cats and apes, and elephants and other species, where their mental and physical health really suffers over a period of time. And I think, this is terrible, isn't it? Because, companion animals, our pets, are really important to us in that human-animal relationship. The idea that we're going to hand them over to be fed to lynx or to tigers or lions in a zoo is just beyond me. I've seen a YouGov poll today saying that 63% of British people think this is completely unacceptable. Only 23% would accept the reasons from the zoo to say that it would give the animals the opportunity to eat a carcass with fur and bones on it.
I'd like to meet those 23% of people and give them a bit of a shake,
Yes.
to be honest. Chickens, rabbits and guinea pigs form an important part of the diet of our predators. I mean, we can't get away from the fact that these lynx do need to be fed. But the thought, well, or do they actually? I mean, I want lynx to survive and thrive. Whether that should actually be in a zoo or not, I think I have other views on that, which we can perhaps get into, Dominic. But actually, when it comes to this, the fact that an appeal is being made, if the zoo is under pressure and can't afford to feed its own animals, well, they're the ones who need to look at alternative arrangements, don't they?
Yes, and I think this is a broader reflection on the zoo industry, to be quite frank. We're led to believe that, zoo industry is there to protect the animals. Animal welfare is the most important thing. It's there to educate us about animals and how they can be protected in the wild. And indeed, they put money back into conservation around the world. To be fair, most zoos don't do that at all. Many of them are struggling. Lots of people are deciding not to go to zoos because I think quite rightly they're listening to organisations like Born Free that are telling them that there's actually not the best place to keep, tigers or leopards or lions or lynx or elephants or great apes. They belong in the wild. They don't belong, behind bars in urban environments for us to gawp at them. We know there's enough scientific evidence to show that those animals really suffer a lot of stress. They often get obesity problems, they get various other health-related problems, and their life expectancy is far shorter than what it would be in the wild. So, there's a very good case to say actually their time has come. And a lot of these organisations that run these zoos are struggling financially in Britain and around the world. And I think this is probably another case of a zoo that's trying to hide its broader animal welfare and income problems. And this maybe they think is a bit of a PR exercise. It's going to raise their profile. But I think it's misfired because I think it just makes people think about the horrific nature of what's going on in places like that.
I think you're absolutely right, Dominic. And what worries me as well is they say, oh, if you just got sick of your animal or, it's healthy, but you don't want it anymore, well, just send it to a zoo, it can be euthanized and fed to a lynx. I mean, there's so much about that that's just totally wrong. First of all, people shouldn't have animals unless they can look after them properly. They shouldn't get them in the first place. Second of all, it encourages people to be bored of their animals. If your dog gets big, if your cat gets old, when you have an animal, it's a long-term investment. It's an investment for maybe 20 years, maybe longer. of knowing that that animal might get old, might get sick, might have expensive health problems, might need special food, might need things in lots of different ways. And it's not just the, you know, bright-eyed, happy puppy that's there, or the fluffy kitten or whatever. This is a long-term commitment. I know there are people who, for lots of reasons, financial reasons, family reasons, heartbreaking reasons often, do have to give their animals up, but they should give them to rescue shelters, and a home should be found for those animals with someone who does have the capacity and the love to take them. And that this very thought that, oh, if you just get bored, or yeah, you don't like it anymore or whatever, oh, just give it to the zoo, we'll put it down, which is ludicrous, and then we'll give it to your lynx. I mean, that to me is just inhumane.
It is inhumane, it's not ethical, and I think it cuts across, you know, our views of the importance of the relationship we have with our companion animals, our pets. And thankfully, I think most people in this country would not accept that at all. And you're right, there is a cost of living crisis in this country. There's lots of animal shelters that are overflowing with animals that need good homes. But there are lots of people and organisations dedicated to rehoming those animals. So if you are in difficulties, there are places you can take them to. I think Denmark's a bit of an odd one, really. You know, one of the zoos in Denmark a number of years ago, you might remember, they killed a young giraffe, and then they dissected it in front of children.
Goodness
and they
me.
claimed it was an educational thing that would benefit them, which was absolutely horrific, and that made headlines around the world. So I think there is a certain element of how Danes go about these things, to be quite frank, that we probably find quite shocking. But I come back to what I said earlier on. I think, you know, this zoo is probably financially struggling. I think animal welfare is not the top priority. I wouldn't accept this as a good thing to do. There are places in China, Peter, and you can find videos of this on YouTube quick enough, where they throw live animals into
I don't want to. I don't want to look at any of that stuff.
And
I really
that's
don't.
where some of this can lead to. It's absolutely horrendous animal cruelty. And that's for exploitation and entertainment. You know, people sit there watching it, think it's funny, chasing animals around and killing them like that. It's horrible for the animals.
These people need to have a word with themselves. Anybody who watches stuff like that and finds it entertaining, I mean, that there's something wrong with you. I'm sorry.
There is, but, you know, this goes on. You know, there's a lot of exploitation and immense cruelty to animals around the world. And we are, as organisations like Born Free and other charities and NGOs, trying to campaign to improve standards in regulation and control, and actually say to people, we should move on. We don't need to keep animals behind bars like this. You know, there's much greater ways we can in the digital world see all the beauty of nature without actually having to cause this type of suffering. So I hope this might make people think twice about zoos and about some of the issues around animal welfare in zoos as well.
Yeah. Dominic, thanks as always. Appreciate your contribution. That's Dominic Dyer, their animal welfare campaigner and chairman of Nature 2030. Thanks to people who've been in touch about this as well. Dave in Dorset says, is it your woke side emerging, Peter? What else do you think the animals in zoos are fed? Well, I know animals in zoos are fed meat. I know they're not sitting there, you know, having, you know, lettuce and onion and, you know, a bit of tomato. I know that. I'm perfectly aware of that. I think I probably have a bit of an issue with zoos in general, quite frankly, but nonetheless, those animals do exist. They exist, and they are in a situation where they need to be fed. That's okay. I get that, Dave. What I'm not advocating is, and I'm a meat eater. I love a good steak. You know, I like hot dogs. You know, I'm not going to say no to a nice piece of chicken, but that will have been killed in a way that is. It's brutal and it's horrible, and I don't want to watch it. I don't want to be in an abattoir and see it happening. But nonetheless, there's an element of humanity there. There's an element of those animals being killed in a way that is the least traumatic that it can be, even though it's horrible. I get that, and I'm not minimising that for a second. What this is different, Dave. What this is saying to someone who owns a pet, we're going to put the pet down if you don't want it anymore, a healthy animal, and then give it to a zoo animal. That's a different thing. Alison says, bring the lynx to Birmingham. They wouldn't starve there. Disgraceful, says Alison. Plenty of rubbish for them indeed, anyway. Anna in Surrey says, you're not understanding the description of healthy. The donated pets are not allowed to be killed by the choice of the owner. There are pets that need to be euthanized due to medical necessity. The description healthy means free from certain recent drug treatments that could harm the lions. The alternative food fed to the lions will have met a much less kind death, says Anna in Surrey, who's a mother to 19 blind and disabled rescue cats, aka animal lover. Well, you certainly are an animal lover if you're looking after those animals, and good for you. Tony in Manchester says, stop being soft. It's a circle of death. Better this than deep frying them, says Tony in Manchester. You're all heart, Tony. Alison says, I could not do that to my dog, and if people do, they are sick. Those animals shouldn't be in a zoo. And Jean says, regarding the potential Danish zoo action, like you, I'm absolutely appalled and disgusted by the mere thought of this. Where could this end? People being paid to donate their unloved pets. Great show as always, says Jean. Well, Jean, the people essentially are. I mean, first of all, thanks for your excellent message. But I mean, horse owners can receive a tax deductions in some circumstances when donating animals to zoos. Like if a horse has to be put down, or if it dies of natural causes, if it's lame, if it's going to be in pain or whatever, and then, you know, what do you do with the carcass? I can just about get my head around that. But this is a voluntary thing, saying if you're just fed up with your you know, guinea pig, we'll just give it and it can be put down. It's awful. It's horrible. Another person on Twitter says, "Are you seriously kidding me? The dog peed in the house, taking them to the zoo. Did the cat scratch you, taking them to the zoo? What kind of zoo cannot afford to buy proper food for these animals? I'm worried about this. Release the animals." Well, we want the animals to have a good life, of course. Jennifer Murray says, "I would definitely have a problem with anyone who could do this to their pet and animal that trusts they're human." Very, very good point. And Dawn says, "Animal welfare should be an absolute priority. I support lots of animal charities and can't understand the mentality of humans who mistreat pets or wildlife," says Dawn in Chelmsford. Well, good for you, mate, and I'm glad you do that. Thanks also to Brian Shepherd, who's been in touch with a lovely message. He says, "Hi Peter, absolutely loving the weekday programme. Some brilliant thoughts on the life of James Whale. Another voice from my youth, now gone, with the other legendary broadcasters Steve Wright and Johnny Walker. The state of this country is both sad and worrying. Our daughter is currently home from Dubai on holidays from her teaching job. She has said that if it wasn't to visit us and her sister, she wouldn't come back again. She can't wait to return, as she feels safer there than walking the streets here. How sad. Take care and keep up the good work." Listen, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate that message. And Henry has said, "Does the government not realise that we can all do basic maths? If we let in 10,000 out who shouldn't be here in the first place and should be deported anyway, and then let 10,000 in, how is that an advantage to this country?" says Henry. We'll take more of your calls, text, tweets and voice notes after the break, before Kevin O'Sullivan comes up at 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk.
With great regret, we bring you the heartbreaking news that our very own James Whale has passed after his terminal cancer battle. He was 74 years old. James Whale began his career way back in 1975 when he pioneered the late-night phone-in. In his time, he hosted numerous shows for ITV, the BBC, finally ending up with us here at Talk Radio in 2016.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who's getting in touch with their memories of James Whale, who very sadly left us yesterday after his battle with cancer ended. He was 74 years old. Audrey has sent in this message. It's a lovely one. Just here to share my memory of your wonderful colleague James Whale. I was very young, maybe late teens, and James had a late night slot on what was Piccadilly Radio covering Manchester. We would rush home from a night out to tune in and listen. His shocking, outspoken, direct approach was hilarious to us youngsters. On one occasion, my friends and I sat in my father's car to listen to not disturb anyone else in the house. In those days, whatever one person watched or listened to, the whole house had to do the same. I didn't realise that this would drain the car battery, rendering it with a flat battery for my dad's commute to work. It was the first and only time I lied. I denied any knowledge. Unfortunately, when he got into his car radio, Piccadilly Radio started blurting out of the radio. James was the first person who I had ever heard who had the courage of his convictions to challenge a viewpoint intelligently and so quickly. I loved him. R.I.P. James, and condolences to his wife, family, friends, colleagues and listeners. Audrey, what a lovely message. I'm very, very happy to read that out, and thank you for it. And as I say, it's been a very, very sad couple of days here at Talk, but so many smiles on our face as well as we remember James. And all of today we've been remembering James, who passed away yesterday. We've been playing the best moments of his show. Who could forget the Union Baron Steve Headley threw out of the studio? This was, I remember this at the time, it was a classic. Let's have a look at this.
Well, you want to talk rubbish? Go and talk to the BBC or some other.
But what do you think about the Hamas?
I don't
what about free speech?
Was
James?
Hamas
When they drove the Palestinians
went out
off
in
their
2000.
land?
You
Don't be
want to look at
silly.
your history books. 2005, they all left.
1947 is when the Nakba happened. I've never met such ill-informed people in my life.
Quiet.
Countries
Quiet. Seriously, can you be quiet?
The Arab countries actually gave the Jews refuge when the Holocaust was happening. How about that?
They were on the Nazi side.
You don't know your history. You don't know your history.
I don't know what he says. I'm executive producer.
Are you terrorist state? James, you trying to assault me, James? You trying to assault me, James?
I'm an old man with cancer.
Well, James, don't please.
Well, do what I ask and go.
I'm not going to go. And you won't be able to remove me, James, so please don't.
Why? What are you going to do?
I'm making a statement here for Palestine.
A statement of rubbish. Just talking rubbish. Take your book and go out and support Palestine. I know you want to hit me.
I'm not going to hit you, James.
No, you're not. You're absolutely right.
Not at all.
You're quite Hamas with Israel.
You're a silly little man. You're a silly little man. A genocide enabler. A genocide enabler, James.
You talk crap.
You're a genocide enabler.
All you can spout is that crap, isn't it? Genocide and that. From the river to the sea. Genocide.
Well, Steve Headley eventually left the studio. That was February 2024. That was James Whale and Ash Gould there throwing out Steve Headley, who was in this studio, but not for long after that, I can tell you. My goodness, James Whale, total one-off. We'll miss him. Thank you to Bootsy Cat, who says the main point of the story earlier is that big cats should not be in zoos. And Chris Hannon's been in touch and says, "Hi Peter, thank you for highlighting these animal welfare issues. I'm absolutely disgusted by this Danish zoo. Can you please do a special programme on raising awareness of animal cruelty issues, especially those in China and Turkey?" Well, it's a theme to which I return to a lot in my programme. I'm probably not going to do a whole programme on it, but certainly these stories emerge and we do discuss them. We discuss whatever you want to discuss, because this is my show, but it's your show too. I want to speak to Stephen in Cambridge now about ethnicity, and this is a big debate about when the police put information out. They talk about certain people who are accused of crimes, for example. Should we know their ethnicity? Stephen, what do you think?
Well, it just seems funny to me, Peter, that when I was at work before I retired, everything used to be about KPIs, statistics, and
key performance indicators. Yeah,
firms ran on it. You know, it was the core of their business. But isn't it funny that as soon as it starts proving that things ain't going how you think they are, they want to do away with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. It's a very fair point, Stephen.
You know, I mean, why hide the ethnicity? It gives.
Well, we should just. I mean, it should just be equal. If they give it in one case, they should give it in all cases.
Well, obviously, but it's when you go for medical treatment or anything, they ask you, are you English?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what's your ethnicity? We have to fill out the forms on so many different occasions. Really good point, Stephen. Let's speak to Laura Jane in Hampshire on One In, One Out. Laura Jane, you're very welcome to the programme.
Hi there. Just wanted to offer my condolences as well to the Talk family and to James's family.
Thank you, Laura Jane. Appreciate that.
Sent up a prayer this morning. I wanted to say that I cannot understand how intelligent people, all of us Talk family, are highly intelligent. How come we do not get that the government are doing this on purpose and they're not going to get to back down? They couldn't care a monkey's what we think, because there's a more sinister side to this. And anyway, they know that anybody who comes up before the High Court or whatever, they're going to get their
well, there's an army of lawyers with this one in, one out scheme that wanted to fail, and this has been my question all afternoon, Laura Jane. Can it even work within the framework of the one in, one out?
But they know that. And therefore, there is no point in us looking for reasons or trying to find some sort of intellectual or some legal. It is for a purpose. Yeah. They hate our country. They want us to have terrible. They believe strongly in pitting our neighbours against each other. They want that. They want us to hate our neighbours, and it's very hard to see why people cannot see. I mean, even Southport. I mean, look at how some of the things happened in Southport. These riots that are going on at the moment, or let's not call them riots yet, but people are being bussed into these places to make us feel affronted, and more than affronted. It's all a game, and it is a sinister game, and I do wish people would wake up and understand that there is a bigger plan out there, and they, the Labour Party, are a small part of it. And yes, you can call me a conspiracy theorist.
No, I don't. I don't call you a conspiracy theorist at all. I think your view is...
Everything that went on in COVID has come true. Well, I turned 60 during COVID, and I'd never marched in my life. And I marched every Saturday, and never once did the BBC say how many people were marching. Okay. They always talked about the riots at the end. And anyway, I'm sorry, but I do believe there's a sinister plot out there, and we all need to stay strong together.
Thank you, Laura Jane. Let me see if I can fit in two more callers before the end. Mark in Lincolnshire first, and Matt in Cheshire. If you just are brief, if you don't mind. Mark, go ahead.
Hi there, Peter.
Hi, Mark.
Hi there. Condolences to everybody there.
Thank you.
Obviously, you know, he was a bit of a legend in his lifetime.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, on the point of the call, the one in, one out. I actually wanted to kind of pick up where your last caller was there, but she was talking about, you know, conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. She's right in a lot of what she says. It's understanding the ideology behind these people, what this is really all about. You can see what's actually going on in the counter protests outside the migrant hotels at the moment, because it's not just the socialist workers placards that you see. They also have other stuff, you know, open borders, no more borders, this kind of thing. This is the rhetoric they're talking. This is it's like this newfangled global communism that seems to be coming in. And she's right in so much as it is designed to divide people, because that's how you want it. You're much more controlled when you're all divided. You know, if you're all united, this is why they destroy.
But is there an idea behind all this, or is it just mismanagement? Is it all just completely chaotic, do you think?
Well, the idea behind it, I believe, Peter, is to do with control at the end of the day.
Okay.
It's as I say, it's essentially classical communism. You know, you bring all these people in, you diminish the voting power of the indigenous population, so that you can essentially therefore control these groups, these little ethno groups that you have. They'll all be busy fighting amongst themselves, so they'll not be watching what you're actually doing in the background. I mean, the whole notion of, I mean, put it like this, Peter, and this might be seen as quite a controversial thing to say, but if we were to, for example, let's say we as a nation were to, let's say, flood somewhere like, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, for example, with 2 to 5 million white Europeans.
Mark, I'm really sorry. We're just going to have to pick this up on another occasion. We're just really running out of time here, and I just want to speak to Kevin O'Sullivan. What's coming up on this programme? Kevin, good to talk to you.
That's Mark from Lincolnshire, isn't it?
It is.
You get to recognise these voices, don't you?
Yes.
Good caller. I've got Rod Little on for half an hour. We'll talk about Starmer's strange statement. There should be transparency whenever possible in terms of whether or not migrants are responsible.
You've got to do it the whole
what
time.
Does that mean?
You've got to do it the whole time.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
That's weasel words. It means that we won't be told,
yes,
in my view. Also, the increasing fiasco of the one-in, one-out deal, migrant deal. I'm telling you now, Peter, I'm sure you